Sunday Funday, SNL Sunday, Drama Fun Reacts, mainstream media manufacturer except for Cuba War, Epstein's Fortnite Fury, Epic Fail, Day 79. Straight is closed. Get it now. We're going to do fun at gunpoint, okay? Fun at gunpoint. Just you wait. Okay, buddy, today, poggers. I mean, sure, I'll do it, but like usually okay, buddy is just literally the same guy. It's just one guy posting. Mandatory fun. You know who else does mandatory fun? Kim Jong-un, okay? And that's precisely what we're doing as well. We let the subreddit die. Okay, but it's cope because like I do look at it and I look at it to like restart it, right? But then nobody ever does anything with it. So what am I supposed to do? Yeah, there's new Iranian war efforts have restarted. Trump really wants to wage it. Trump really wants to wage that shit. I think, I don't know what's going on with the whole, with the Xi Jinping conversation that took place, but it kind of feels like he didn't learn any lessons from that. I guess the only thing he responds to is you know, military might. Kind of feels like it, right? Fetterman had another stroke. Dude, I feel the same way about MAGA as I do about Israel. Okay. What is
you
this?
guys really want to? Okay, you want my actual take on asking people if Israel has a right to exist? I think it's the stupidest fucking question you can ask someone. I think it's a extremely it is a gotcha question, and it's so fucking stupid. Chat, ask me. Do I think Israel has the right to exist? No. Do I think Germany has the right to exist? No. Do I think Iraq has the right to exist? No. Do I think India has the right to exist? No. What the
Damn, this guy hates all the countries. It's crazy. This guy hates all the countries in a row. By the way, the reason why I specifically asked that question to her was because I wanted her to, like, I wanted to see what she would say, right? I wanted to see what, like, if she could, you know, hit the Zoran line. I mean, he already gave us the method, right? He gave everybody the method. You say, look, you can do two things in that situation where you're going to be like, I think the theoretical conversation about like states existing is stupid. But yeah, I think every country that already exists should have equal rights and equal representation, right? Israel currently doesn't. Like, if you want to say, I believe in Israel's right to existence as a secular, solitary state that offers equal rights and representation to all of the citizens, then yeah, that's a pretty good answer, because that's not what Israel's doing currently, is it? You know? This has been out. Oh my God, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it today. I'm going to watch Maya today, okay? I think Maya's at the UN today, too. Twitter acting like LA mayor doesn't have a say when cops start tear gassing and bashing protesters' skulls for organizing against a fucking genocide. I know.
fuck does the right to exist mean?
He's right, though.
What the fuck does that mean?
For the record, that's he's right about that. That question was designed as a Hosborough question to basically try to contest all critics of Israel and the sentiment that they have with this idea that like they just want all Jews to die or something. It's just a way to try to trap someone. Bro, sounded like I'm hurting him sending my TED talk. Damn, you're so news-pilled. No, I'm going to do it today. In any case, let's do it.
You had Clinton.
What I was going to say is I feel the same way about MAGA as I do about Israel, because it's just like a dying movement in many respects. Obviously, MAGA is a lot more popular than Israel is, at least in America. But it's always awesome when the only loyal servants that you can find are genuinely brain dead ogres. Like, who's out here going out the bat for Israel? Oh, John Fetterman. They basically keep him in a laboratory and they only release him into the wild after they wind him up. Like he has a crank in his ass and they just like wind it, and then they release. And he goes out and he's like, you are anti-Semitite. I love Israel. Israel number one. Like that's all he's good for nowadays. He's just good for being a fucking empty vote. And perhaps one of the last remaining Hasbro merchants out there. There's just nothing left. The tank is empty, you know? The tank is empty, folks. Even Israel's biggest, strongest warriors don't chirp as much anymore because they've given up. They know everybody hates them. Yes, I saw the Cars for Kids shit. Obviously, we're going to be covering that today. Don't be crazy. Of course, we're going to cover that. It's a crazy story. It's another one of these stories where it's like, how can I explain this story to you without coming across as anti-Semitic? Okay? It's another one of those stories where I'm like, look, I'm going to tell you what happened here, but I really need you to understand that this is not an anti-Semitic conspiracy. It's just a thing that happened. Okay? Yeah. It's funny because it's been on their website, I think, but not in their jingles. Yeah, I wonder why it's not in their jingles. Yeah. 1877 Cars for Kids. Specifically for Jewish kids would be weird, right? Like that would probably be weird to add into the jingle, right? Like, yeah. Not just all Jewish kids, but Orthodox Jewish kids in Lakewood. Just wanted to make sure you understand. None of the money's going to any other type of kid. That's what it is. That's literally, this is the court case. Good luck. Good luck. It's one of those stories where you're like, it's one of those stories where you're like, I really want to explain this thing to you. This unbelievably famous charity has been caught doing false advertising, and let's just, it's one of those things where it's like, listen, I'm going to try to hold your hand as I explain the story to you. It's a real, I'm not going to say what kind of doctor. Sometimes there are groups of people who will, I don't know, take donations and make it seem like that donation is going all around the country to aid children. And then here, let's just run the story. Fuck it.
Chances are you've heard this jingle, but you may not hear it anymore.
Let's go back to Mike Rogers. Mike, a judge has ruled Cars for Kids can't keep using their ads.
Yeah, not in California. We've got the judge's ruling right here, and it all stems from what they're doing with the money after you donate a car to them. Now, this all stems from a case where a man in Orange County donated a 2001 Volvo to the organization. He got $250 for it, and he said, according to the judge, he thought that money was going to go to underprivileged kids here in California. He says he thought that because of the ad.
It's quick and easy. You'll get a vacation voucher and maximum tax deduction.
1877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Why does Cars for Kids funnel most of its money to Five-ish/Yap Dollar and a town in New Jersey? Yeah. Why would I donate my car to a kid? The fuck are they supposed to do with it? Yeah, anyway, let's continue. I'm just not going to say anything further. I'm just going to let the story play itself out, okay?
Yeah, because kids are our future is what the text on the bottom of the ad says, but he was shocked to find out that the money doesn't go to kids in California at all. Instead,
1877 Cars for Kids. You might think it's all for kids. 1877 Cars for Kids is just for specific kids. 1877 Cars for Kids. This is just for Jewish kids. 1-877 Cars for Kids, but not all Jewish kids. Just in Lakewood. Just in Lakewood, New Jersey. 1-877 Cars for Kids. Now, you might have thought that this was don't quit your day job. Yeah, okay. Well, this is my day job.
Goes to Cars for Kids' sister foundation, URA, which is a Jewish organization based in New Jersey that actually benefits teenagers. Now, this case went to court in Orange County. The judge ruled that
1-877 Cars for Kids. Actually, it's not even for Jewish kids. And 1-877 Cars for Kids is just for teenagers from Lakewood, New Jersey. This one specific neighborhood. This one specific Orthodox neighborhood, and it's not even for kids, it's just for teenagers. And you have anyway. Oh, God.
Ultimately, Cars for Kids is using misleading practices in advertising here in the state of California, which violates state law. I want to show you some of the testimony that was given in court, and this was in the judge's ruling. The COO testified that the organization's primary purpose is not to help economically disadvantaged children. The COO in court went on to say programs include matchmaking for young adults and gap year trips to Israel for 17 and 18-year-olds. That's where the majority.
Wow. What? It's no. What? It's birthright. It's a eugenics program for Orthodox Jewish teenagers from Lakewood, New Jersey to get a free trip to Israel so they can go and meet other Israeli Jewish people and stay in Israel. What? Stop. You mean to tell me that that's what it was all along? I feel misled.
Of the funding is going, and then also admitted that Cars for Kids
I live in Chicago, and I had an Uber driver years ago tell me the money went to Jewish teens to fund travel to Israel. I fully thought this was common knowledge. No, it's just one of those stories where, like, if someone says this to you, you immediately assume, like, yeah, that sounds like an anti-Semitic conspiracy. Especially if you hear from like a Arab unk cab driver, you're probably automatically going, "Ooh, this guy's actually kind of strange for telling me this." And then you scratch the surface and you dig deep, and you're like, "Oh my God, he was right. That's crazy." Okay. I don't know what the fuck this is about, but it is very funny because it's just like sits at a grand piano, takes a long contemplative drag from a cigarette, stubs it out in the ashtray overflowing with butts, cracks knuckles, 1-877 Cars for oh, come on, Matt. I'm not reading that. Please show the 5-ish music video after, please. Okay, once again, and I need you to understand something for the Fox News watchers here. I'm not even going to full screen this so that people know this is URA's own video, okay? I'm not watching a fucking Groyper. They didn't make this, okay? This is not like a Groyper edit. URA made this video themselves. I'm just simply observing it. I'm not giving any commentary on it. Okay? This is the other charity that Cars for Kids funds. And this is the 5-ish dance too in Israel. Okay. This is a Jewish organization. They made this video. I didn't make it. I'm not watching a Groyper who made. I'm going to explain it one more time. Okay. Listen. Warning. The video that you are about to watch was made by a Jewish organization. It was not made by a Groyper. Let's take a look. I don't think this is funny at all. I think this is a beautiful video. And there's nothing humorous about this. This doesn't actually lean into any famous tropes or anything like that. If you find that to be humorous, you're actually the bad guy for doing that. That's
Leave your hands and bring them down. Slide right, slide left, turn around. roll your hands from high to low, and that's how the 5.
By the way, this is low-key why I say, like, Israel is one of the most anti-Semitic inventions of all time. Okay? That's just it. Like, everything Israel does sounds so unhinged because it is unhinged. It is so unbelievably anti-Semitic.
Fish goes. Now you try it.
Wave your hands and bring them down. Slide right, slide left, and turn around. Roll your hands from high to low, and that's how the 5-ish goes.
5-ish, everyone. Dance the 5-ish, you'll have fun. 5-ish, your very own. Bring 5-ish to your home. 5-ish, everyone. Dance the 5-ish, you'll have fun. You can dance the 5-ish too. Come and I'll teach you.
Come and I'll teach you.
Wave your hands and bring them down. Slide right, slide left, and turn around. Roll your hands from high to low, and that's how the 5-ish goes.
Why is it American currency? What do you mean? Because it's American, pro-Israeli. Like it's a like an Israel funding operation that is built in America. So it's funded by American dollars from American donors. We just described to you one of the funding mechanisms. Cars for Kids is one of the funding mechanisms, very much duping Americans into thinking that they're funding some sort of like philanthropic organization that aids underprivileged children all around the country. No, it's not. It's just not that. They just take your cars, they sell your cars, they take the money off the cars they sold, and then they fund 5-ish URA, specifically birthright trips, so that 18-year-olds from Lakewood, New Jersey, Orthodox teenagers from Lakewood, New Jersey, can go to Israel and like get married to Israeli Jews so they can continue living in Israel and growing the Israeli Jewish population. Every single, this is trying to accurately describe Cars for Kids without sounding like a conspiracy theorist from 1930s Europe.
So, and I'm not joking, Israel 1877 cars for that one. It is that one. It is the one you're thinking of. The money gained from the donated cars didn't go to support kids as much as it went to support, I don't know, ethno-nationalism, let's just say.
It's like, it's a real, I'm not going to say what kind of teenagers. Look, I know this seems kind of odd to explain, like on its face. Okay? I know. But it's true. It's a thing that happened. Yeah, just fucking Google it, man. Just Google it. I can't explain it to you. Just Google it. Just Google it on your own.
How do I describe this without, like, sounding like Alex fucking Jones? I do not.
I'm a numbers guy. You gotta grok it.
5-ish, everyone. Dance the 5-ish, you'll have fun. 5-ish, your very own. Bring 5-ish to your home. 5-ish, everyone. Dance the 5-ish, you'll have fun. You can dance the 5-ish too. Come and I'll teach you.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of people were donating their cars to 1877 Cars for Kids, thinking that it was like a charity that was helping, teenagers in America or kids in America in poor neighborhoods, and it wasn't. It just wasn't doing that. It was actually funding URA so they can make wonderful videos like this one. The 5-ish dance. 5-ish is one of the other subsidiaries. So how long has it been going? Oh, for decades. This has been I mean, this has kind of been like a known. I was just taking a shower listening to this. That's not a fucking $5 bill dancing with visible Jewish people, is it? Oh no, that's what, for the listeners that are just tuning in. Yes, that's a bunch of Orthodox Jewish teenagers dancing in Jerusalem and numerous parts of Israel with a $5 bill, with a human being inside of a $5 bill costume. They chase the $5 bill in the beginning, which once again, it starts off with the $5 bill running away from the teenagers. I'm just describing for the listeners, for the audio only segment of this community, I am just explaining to them what is on the screen. This is a banger. Okay. Why didn't a single person think, hey, maybe we shouldn't have a visibly Jewish people chasing and hugging a $5 bill? What was happening? I don't know. I don't know what was going on. What is happening at 129? What do you mean? I don't know. Is that JD Vance? Actually, I think it's intentional. There's no way. Yeah. Why is there a guy with a spear? I don't know. I just, maybe that's just a thing that happens in Israel. I'm not sure about that part. I don't really know. Anyway, so that's one of the stories that I was going to cover today. Here, let's continue.
No functional programs in California, except for a backpack giveaway that they admitted is also for marketing purposes and branding purposes. I want to show you the response from Cars for Kids. Cars for Kids says, we believe the decision is deeply flawed, ignores the facts, and misapplies the law. It's well known that we are a Jewish organization, and our website makes it abundantly clear. Take a look and judge for yourself. Then they gave us the link to their website. Their statement goes on to say, we believe this case was nothing more than a lawyer-driven attempt to siphon off charitable funds for their own gain.
Yeah, charitable funds for what? Say what the charitable funds are for. Charitable funds for what? Where are the charitable funds going? For what? How to view this video is not anti-Semitic, though? No, this literally is, like, I mean, this is a straight up anti-Semitic conspiracy. It just happens to not be a theory in this circumstance. Yeah, no, they are literally doing, like, you know, Jewish teenagers chasing a $5 bill. Like, they got zero chill. Like, they just straight up put their whole pussy into it. Okay, they were just like, no, it's fucking, this is what we're doing. What do you mean? That's just what it is. It is charity fraud, misrepresenting itself in its advertisement to dupe people into thinking that they're giving money to, like, you know, poor children or whatever, poor kids. And instead of giving the money to poor kids, it's actually just funding birthright trips for Orthodox Jewish 17 and 18-year-olds to go to Israel to match them with Israeli Jews in Israel, so they get married and they stay in Israel. That's what it is. Why did Adam Friedland allow Nick Mullen to make his joke real with his powers? This actually is... Cumtown has made jokes about this in the past, many, many years prior to this story gaining more prominence in the national level. So you've probably heard. Hold on, let me finish this real quick.
Expect to win on appeal because the law and the facts are clearly on our side. I want to point something out about their first part of the statement that the judge directly addresses here. You saw in their statement, look for yourself, go to carsforkids.org. But the judge says people that hear this ad on the radio or TV shouldn't have to go to the website to understand exactly where the funds are going. The judge says the ads do not make it clear that this is an organization benefiting Jewish children in New Jersey. And in fact, none of the funds, or a very small amount of the funds, are actually benefiting kids here in California. Now, as you heard from Cars for Kids, they plan to appeal, but this is a long-standing issue. And in fact, this issue has already been taken up in other states as well. And judges in other states have ruled in similar manner. So we'll see.
Yeah, so, I mean, you guys have probably seen the ad before, right? We'll run the ad one more time, and you can judge for yourself.
1877 Cars for Kids, KARS Cars for Kids, 1877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today.
Donate online at carsforkids.com. That's cars with a K. Pickup is quick and easy. You'll get a vacation voucher and maximum tax deduction.
1877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today.
Yeah, that's the ad. Okay. I saw this for the first time on a John Oliver video. Yeah, it's you watch it like that, it's it's ambiguous what the organization. I mean, it's not even ambiguous. It's just like you assume that the organization is aiding kids, helping kids. Also, once again, the marketing team on this, they put a black kid on the base. So do with that information what you will. That's a little bit crazy in and of itself. But yeah.
Heard it, maybe many times, over the almost 3 decades it's run on TV and radio.
1877 Cars for Kids.
It's even been mocked in pop culture.
1877 Cars for Kids.
Shut up! Shut up! What is this charity?
But this morning, a Superior Court judge in California says a Cars for Kids jingle must stop being broadcast in the state.
Donate your car.
It's just very funny because the more it unwinds, the funnier it gets, where you're like, oh, so you're telling me that this charity is actually not like helping kids in underserved neighborhoods, just, I guess kids in one neighborhood. You're like, wait, okay, so it's one neighborhood in Lakewood, New Jersey's Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. Wait, you're telling me it actually doesn't even help all Jewish kids around the country? Wait, now you're telling me it doesn't even help the Jewish kids that are Orthodox in Lakewood, New Jersey. It's just teenagers. It's just Orthodox teenagers that are age 16 to 18, and it doesn't even help them. It just pays for their trip to Israel. It's just a way to send them to Israel on a birthright style trip. What the fuck?
Finding the nonprofit has been violating California's false advertising laws.
We have to show they knowingly and intentionally misled the public. And it's not an easy thing to do, but we did it.
The ruling stems from a lawsuit filed by a Southern California man who says he donated a car after hearing the ad on the radio. He believed the proceeds would go to help children in need. But his attorney says,
yeah, help children in need of what? Not children, teenagers in need of a vacation to Israel, in need of a serving a higher purpose of like populating Israel with more, more of the right ethnic group, ethno-religious group. What's up? That's the need. It's a very important need.
That's not where the money has actually been going.
They knew what they were doing. The ad is extraordinarily impactful.
The judge ruling Cars for Kids has misled donors by implying the funds go to support needy children, but that most of the money actually goes to Orthodox Jewish programs in New York, New Jersey, and the Middle East. The court finding the money is spent on sending teenagers to Israel and a $16 million building there. The judge ordering Cars for Kids to pay the victim $250, the fair market value for his non-working car. In a statement, Cars for Kids...
By the way, this is a real, we looked at Russiagate and we scratched the surface, and underneath it, we found Israelgate moment. Because, this is quite literally a common trope for, ethnic enclaves. All they're doing is, stealing American hard-earned dollars to, fund their country and, go back to their own country and fund initiatives there. And it's that's the American dream, baby. That's the American dream, There it is.
It says, we believe this case was nothing more than a lawyer-driven attempt to siphon off charitable funds for their own gain. We expect to win on appeal because the law and facts are clearly on our side.
It will make many charities a little concerned that a case like this could be brought, and checking whether their disclosures are adequate.
All right, so Cars for Kids has until June 8th to stop airing the ads in California or get that ruling put on hold. It's also facing a similar federal class action lawsuit alleging much of the same. Rhiannon.
All right, thank you for that.
What did he know? I mean, the whole Cars for Kids situation is pretty well known. This guy, Moss Planet, did a video on it a year ago.
1877 Cars for Kids. You probably know the tune if you're someone who has listened to radio at some point in the past 30 years. In the most recent rendition, the advertisement features a band of children with instruments that sing their awful, awful song, imploring you to donate your car, presumably for their own sake. It is a jingle so mentally taxing to the listener that it has led to literal death threats being sent to the organization.
Some like, oh, these kids are so cute, but then there was like, these kids should go kill themselves.
For kids. Man, fuck Car for Kids. It's the most stupidest, annoying.
Everybody hates this song so much to the point where most people associate the organization behind it with
the cruel but effective agony of the Cars for Kids jingle.
The omnipresent malice against their ears that the song is. But a lot of others end up donating their cars to these kids, enough to keep their ads on the air. The question is, where are these cars going, and how are they for these kids? To my disappointment, this was not a charity that gave children free vehicles with which to fight each other in a fashion reminiscent of the Twisted Metal games. Instead, Cars for Kids takes
that would be fucking dope. Imagine, that would be super cool if they were giving like 8-year-olds cars, you know? Imagine that's the reason why the guy actually sued the charity. They were like, dude, what the fuck? It was too ambiguous. I thought I was giving my Kia Sorento to an 8-year-old so he could just like, you know, engage in bumper cars. It's fucking bullshit. Bullshit.
Vehicles and flips them at auto auctions. This isn't too unusual, and is a service that many people would rather just use to get a tax break instead of going through the hassle of selling their car by themselves. Despite the pitch of helping children and tax benefits being ostensibly hard to disagree with, the
guy who sues Cars for Kids because he thought if he gave his car up, he would get a child in exchange for the vehicle. Wait a minute. I thought I was giving my car up, and then where's my child? Where's my kid? I thought I'd get a free kid in exchange for a car.
Incredibly awful jingle has made Cars for Kids a charity everyone is sort of allowed to hate. What doesn't help with that reputation gained from the jingle is learning what Cars for Kids actually does with the money they receive. See, Cars for Kids doesn't actually give to any of the children you would think of as particularly in need. That's because the kids in question are being helped not because they are in need of charity, but because they are part of a religious group. Right on the Cars for Kids website, it clarifies that. Our all-encompassing program gives Jewish children and their families the support, resources, and guidance they need to develop into productive members of the community. What the website doesn't clarify is that these Jewish kids are almost exclusively in New Jersey, the city of...
No, but it's funny because it doesn't even do that. Okay? Even that's misleading. There are other sister charity organizations or subsidiary charity organizations, which I'm sure he's going to get into in this video. But like, there are other subsidiary organizations that actually take those funds and then don't even give it to the children. Don't even give it to the Jewish kids in Lakewood, New Jersey. It's just teenagers between the ages of 16 and 18 in Lakewood, New Jersey, who want to go to Israel for a matchmaking opportunity in Israel. It does do tutoring and summer camps for Orthodox kids in Lakewood, I think, at least. Okay. All right. At least there's that.
Lakewood in particular. I was surprised to learn that Cars for Kids was Jewish at first. Growing up in Minnesota, I heard that godforsaken jingle so many times, but had never heard about Cars for Kids.
Quick correction. I know it might seem like it's not a big deal, but teens are kids. I think it's important to be totally consistent on this because it's dangerous to think teens aren't children when we're talking about child marriage and or pedophilia. Thank you for... Yeah, except they don't have even teenagers on the fucking ad. They have little babies on the ad, okay? They have like barely babies on the ad. They could have said Cars for Teens, but they chose kids instead.
Kids from my Jewish friends, or saw any indication that any of the people at the Jewish community center I went to were supporting this seemingly omnipresent Jewish charity. It turns out I wasn't the only one in Minnesota that was confused by this. An investigation by the Minnesota Attorney General's office found that Cars for Kids spent essentially none of its raised money from Minnesota in the state on anything more than more ad buys. Cars for Kids has done a few programs helping the wider community. This mostly seems to manifest in handing out coats, basketballs, and developing an app that reminds you not to leave your children in a hot car. Looking at their website, these programs are either in Newark, New York City, or Philadelphia. Conveniently, no more than...
That sounds literally like contingencies, just to avoid whatever kind of like legal scrutiny might come your way, where you're just like, wow, well, we did this too. Look. God, so many charities are just absolute dog shit, okay? So many charities, man. What the hell?
A day trip from the headquarters of Cars for Kids in New Jersey. But this is all, at best, a half-assed attempt to argue on a technicality. In reality, 92% of the organization's cash is sent directly to another charity, URA, located in Lakewood, New Jersey, and run by Cars for Kids founder Eliyahu Mintz. There is functionally no difference between Cars for Kids and URA outside of paperwork and advertising. As a side note, I wouldn't feel qualified to write about this if I was just talking about URA, as I'm not a member of the Jewish community, nor have I had any personal interactions with Jewish people that prompted me to write this. The truth is that URA forfeited the deniability of being a religious organization, both when it got most of its money from Cars for Kids, and when it didn't even register as one for tax purposes. URA doesn't offer its services to Jewish people outside the greater New York and New Jersey metro area. Less than 1% of the money stays in other states that donate, and besides, any charity that is going to subject us to that awful jingle would already be one under intense legal scrutiny in a just system. I've actually been passively familiar with URA for a few years now. Like an unfortunately large number of things in my life, URA originally came to my attention via an episode of the Cumtown podcast. Now the
No! Hey, that is crazy, bro. Oh my God. This is one of those things where you just don't admit it. You don't admit it. You just keep that to yourself. I mean, I know I brought it up as a joke earlier that this is like a very famous Cumtown bit, but god damn, dude, that's crazy.
I'll get to what part of URA was in that clip specifically, but if you know, you know. URA is itself a modern Orthodox Jewish charity that services said community.
Putting my protective hat on here, okay? For plausible deniability.
Orthodox Judaism is defined by maintaining Orthodox traditions while still interacting with the modern world as it is. This is different from ultra-Orthodox or Haredi Judaism, whose adherents self-segregate from broader society to maintain their beliefs as authentically as possible. In terms of services offered, URA seems to focus mainly on surprise.
10 years ago, people would be shocked to learn that you would listen to a show called Cumtown. Now is normal. It was an ongoing bit in my community where I'd always go, what's Cumtown? That sounds kind of strange. And people would be like, oh, son, aren't you friends with Nick Mullen, Adam Friedland, and Stavros Halkias? Because like people would always try to be like, well, you're not woke. Like you're friends with these guys and they do anti-woke comedy. And I was like, what's Cumtown? Like that was the joke. Be like, what? Seaman Village? I don't know what you're talking about. Because like all of these fucking weirdo edge communities would constantly try to like present me as this like reactionary because I was friends with the Cumtown guys.
The younger generation, although not exclusively. This focus makes sense given that Orthodox families have more children on average than any other Jewish denomination in America, and the community has a general distrust of public institutions. They need a lot of cars to pay for these kids. It is for this reason that the charity exists supposedly, as a means to provide the Orthodox community with help raising children through programs like day camp. I say supposedly because URA is unique even among shady charities for how strange it is. High-rise apartments, strip malls, and even mixed-use development in Jerusalem. Cars for Kids is already known to have some assets that are tangentially related to kids at best. When I looked at the tax returns for the two charities, a lot more than just buildings started to come up. I'll give you a rundown of a couple interesting finds.
I love how often the word shock gets used in your commentary in your chat, leading into the silliness of the dog collar thing. No, shocking is like a normal word that people use. You're just hyper focused on it because you think that it's like a thing that we're fearful of or something. It's just a word, man.
One property that URA owns is 985 Clare Drive in Lakewood, New Jersey. According to tax records, URA acquired this property in 2015. What's interesting is that the last time 985 Clare Drive was sold on the market was in 2009, according to Redfin. The property also isn't a facility, it's a single-family home. It's not the only single-family home owned by URA either. 851 Morris, 624 Vine, 107, and 119 Rutgers, all bought in 2008. All but one off the market since then. 107 was sold in 2022 for $85,000 more than the tax-assessed value. I don't know what these are being used for, but the fact that Google Street View doesn't show any signs that these buildings are being converted into a non-residential role makes me think that there might be more going on. Another revelation from these forms is how much profit this nonprofit makes. 2021 revenue was $77,977,049, up 62.5% from the previous year, while expenses of $28,251,610 represented a mere 7% rise. These numbers aren't unprecedented. Look at pretty much any college in the US, but still raise questions. More specifically, it makes you wonder what that $34 million in cash is doing just sitting there. For that, I have at least a partial answer. URA hosts a yearly charity auction in a live stream telethon format. During this telethon, URA gives out several prizes, many of them straight up cash, in a format that they call an auction, but is really just a raffle. Interspersing these auctions is a character I knew I was going to have to talk about eventually, and it filled me with a sense of dread. I already mentioned it earlier, but it's time to talk about Five-ish.
Uh-oh.
Five-ish is something else. As alluded to previously, I first heard about Five-ish from the then Cumtown podcast. Five-ish was being discussed because, well, this is what Five-ish looks like. Five-ish is a giant $5 bill with cartoon eyes and giant Mickey Mouse-like limbs. Essentially, he is sort of like the mascot of URA, who goes around to their events and serves as what I think is supposed to be a sort of comic relief character. To quote a friend of mine who was on that episode of the aforementioned podcast, this is like if the Expendables of anti-Semitism came together to make something to make fun of Jews. URA really likes using Five-ish. This isn't a mascot I dug up from years ago or something they tested out in a couple videos. Like, they really fucking love Five-ish. They love Five-ish so much that...
Is this a Nazi group? This is a Jewish charity. This is, I mean, I already gave you the fucking warning ahead of time. I was like, this is not like Groypers didn't come up with this, okay? How does it feel knowing you've done this for years and the only legacy you have is that you're the guy who shocked his dog on stream? It's all you'll be remembered for. Eat a bag of dicks. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the case, buddy. But thank you. Thank you for watching.
They have Five-ish as a plushie, Five-ish on a hat.
If you keep repeating it to yourself, maybe it'll be the case, though. Keep dreaming, dream machine.
President Five-ish, the Five-ish car, or Five-ish mobile. Really shitty CGI Five-ish. Five-ish in Israel on the news. Five-ish in Israel being harassed by other Orthodox Jews.
Gonna hurt you, Kenny's gonna hurt you.
These are filmed and uploaded to the URA channel, by the way. This is not like, again... This wasn't like a random sighting and then they filmed it and then maybe some like weirdos got their hands on it. Like all of this is uploaded to the URA channel. I showed you one of them already. Okay. I showed you one of them already. I need you to understand. This is URA, the subsidiary under, the Cars for Kids, like the funnel for Cars for Kids is a Jewish charity. Okay, you should schedule your appointment for Tooth Hurdy. Why can't you be a cute chatter like this, like you are in the fucking in the Hitler coalition? You know, dude is obsessed with Asmund every now and then, so no argument made. I suspect Asmongold is live, and he's probably reacting to a video of mine, which is why this guy came in here to say this, right? Anyway, let's continue. Yeah, mass arrest any day now, buddy.
Five-ish and his Five-ish family being washed ashore and threatened by the military of Panama, being partially led by a knockout version of the Prince from Frozen. Okay, why don't I start there at that last one? So... URA commissioned or produced, I couldn't find exactly if it was done in-house, these animations featuring Five-ish. The intent is children's programming.
You're in the thumbnail?
Is Schmorg, as in...
Yeah. Mr. Yep. Mr. I never talk... Mr. Asmund never talks about Hassan. Hassan only talks about Asmongold. Boom. Always in the thumbnail, baby. Always. Every damn day.
Smorgasbord. The most interesting schmorg is one that is 38 minutes long and involves the aforementioned military of Panama. So the video starts, and after a short intro, we see 3 boys walk out of their bullet-ridden school onto the sidewalk. 2 of the boys stop as the 3rd boy asks where they're going. They say,
"We're going to visit Five-ish."
As all 3 boys blink their porcelain doll eyes to mimic human behaviors, a Cars for Kids branded taxi drives past and the scene moves on to another intro, except this one transitions into a theme song, an incredibly long theme song. In fact, I did some napkin math to find out that this theme song is a little under 2 minutes. For context, that is longer than the 1-minute, 36-second intro of the syndicated version of Twin Peaks. If you include the cold intro, it is about as long as the intro to Band of Brothers, and only 10 seconds shorter than the longest intro in TV language history, which is the cut intro to Twin Peaks. Look, it's a long intro. Rest in peace, David Lynch. The 3 boys finally arrive at Five-ish's house, where they inform him that they have anxiety that they won't be able to attend the yeshiva, religious school, that they want. There doesn't seem to be an inciting incident, really, or a stated reason that these boys are nervous. Nevertheless, Five-ish regales them with the story of when my friends and I were really scared. Now, even though this sounds like Five-ish is about to tell these whiny kids about his time in prison, that is unfortunately not the direction it goes. Five-ish is dropped off at the airport, does his Catskills material.
Wait. You forgot your change.
Change? What do you mean change? I need a change? Well, I mean, everybody could use a little bit of change. I'm not saying that, but I mean, how much do I really need to change?
No, you left.
And enters the building. Then, Five-ish is accosted by this overbearing TSA worker, who then waves him through. The worker then starts talking with another, more anthropomorphic Five-ish, who is bringing a kosher meal on the plane, but is told it looks too much like a bomb. They then strike up a conversation about what yeshiva they went to, for some reason. What makes this so bizarre is, for lack of a better term, it's sort of unskilled racism. Let me try to explain. So, the TSA worker speaks with some kind of accent. I say some kind because it's not clear what stereotype this man is supposed to represent. He wears a yarmulke, which would imply he's Jewish, but he also punctuates his sentences with Arabic terms like Habibi.
Habibi, look at me. Do I look like a stewardess?
This accent is so thick that it could either be
No, that's Israeli. No, that's a Israeli. That is an Israeli Arab Jew. Like, that's what the... It's not that confusing when you are a little bit more in tune with what's going on. You're so lame, and so is your entire fan base. You just sit in your chair and react to bullshit. John Pork is scalding. Yeah. Asmongold's chest down the line, chatter. Famously, I'm known famously for sitting around and reacting to shit and never going outside.
Israeli or some kind of approximation of Arabic. I say this because there's another Five-ish sketch showing an Arab terrorist going through security without issue. I think this man is supposed to be an overbearing Arab who accosts Five-ish, who wants to bring a kosher meal on, but then they forgot and decided to add in some dialogue that makes him seem Israeli. After this, the Five-ishes get on their flight with El Al, the largest Israeli airliner, which then promptly crashes into the ocean because of engine breakage.
Enough reps for everyone. I know I should have done Hatavas Chalayim this morning.
I thought this was funny because they clearly did not consult El Al for this, as most airlines do not like to be shown crashing into the ocean. In fact, this is sort of the main things airlines don't want people to think of when it comes to them. It then cuts to the French-British island colony of Bingsalou, which has the Panamanian flag for some reason. It's never really explained why the colony is both French and British. Maybe it's a Quebec situation. The island is ruled by some sort of 17th century colonial merchant who I'll call the King, and an Xbox 360 version of the prince from Frozen named Franco. The King is being entertained by scuba divers who are hitting a ball that literally just has the default texture on it. No, I'm not kidding, that's just the default texture from Gary's mod.
Yes, that was wonderful. Let me see you slam that volleyball into the pool again.
In with it.
And go all the way to the nose.
That is disgusting.
There's sort of an implication that the King is getting a sexual thrill out of this, even though it just looks like an early CGI tech demo. I also have to mention that Franco seems to have a tribal tattoo on his jacket for some reason. We never really get to see his back fully, so I can't be entirely certain, but it seems—
Oh my god, he does. Why does he have a tribal tattoo in the back of his jacket?
It's like someone decided to add a sick-ass mid-2000s tribal tat for literally no reason. Anyway, the Five-ish plane crashes into the ocean with the thematically consistent but horrifically tragic 5 survivors. There are actually people on the plane, by the way, real humans that... Wait, is that Go Animate? No, I swear to fucking God, they use Go Animate assets on this thing. I don't even know how that's easier, honestly. They didn't animate them, they just loved the Go Animate assets so much that they need them to be there. I just had to mention that, I'm sorry. Anyway, the Five-ishes wash up on the beach, sing a song, and get reprimanded.
Prepare for war. The French.
The next most interesting thing to happen is when Lord Farquaad shows up. A lot of exposition occurs, there's a song, yada yada yada. The Five-ish congregation finds themselves trapped at the royal palace, where, after a musical number...
Wait a minute. Let me explain.
What the fuck is going on? I thought this was about a charity. Chatter, I don't know how to explain this to you, but it's still about the charity. Yeah. No, this is, I mean, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of that, like, which one was the cult that did an anime? Like, that made that anime, the Japanese cult, Fun Times, Happy Fun Times or whatever. Basically, this is the Orthodox Jewish version of that, where, remember, we started today by talking about Cars for Kids. Cars for Kids... oh yeah, Shinrikyo, Shinrikyo. So basically, here's what happened. Okay, I'm gonna start from the beginning just to, you know, help people catch up. Cars for Kids is a charity with a very famous jingle, 1-877 Cars for Kids. Cars for Kids has been sued all around the country in different state courts for misleading people who have, you know, donated their cars into believing that they're donating their cars to help children in, you know, underserved neighborhoods or whatever. Turns out Cars for Kids actually takes all of those funds and puts 92% of those funds into a Jewish charity called URA. Most of the money is spent not even on children. Some of it is spent specifically on Jewish children in Lakewood, New Jersey. But most of the money actually goes to URA, which is spent on taking Jewish Orthodox kids who are between the ages of 16 and 18 on birthright trips for matchmaking purposes to Israel. Okay? And this is one of the creative materials that URA has designed. I don't know for what reason. I don't know why they thought that this was a good way to like promote the charity or anything like that. But basically, URA has a character called Five-ish. It's a $5 bill. It's an anthropomorphic $5 bill that runs around all over the state of Israel. And there's a bunch of like Orthodox Jewish kids in the state of Israel that like chase him around. It feels fake, but it's not. And they're just, I mean, it's a money funneling operation. It sounds like an unbelievably anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, except it's just a thing that's been happening. And since more people are aware of it now, I just wanted to give you a little bit more background into it.
With a song. Hit it. New England clam chowder or gefilte fish, it's not too difficult to call. Why eat crab cakes or octopus instead of soup with matzo balls?
Get beckoned by a man named Moshe, a, quote, Jew just like you. This confirms that Five-ish is a full part of the religion and that URA wants children to know that money can indeed become Jewish. Moshe then tells them they don't like Jews here, which you would think is a prejudice that would fall away after a while, but apparently is very deeply held. There also isn't any mention by any other islander made about Jews, which makes me think that Moshe is just a guy who's...
Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. Moshe kind of looks like a Nazi. I don't know why they made him dress like that. But okay, so for those of you just tuning in now, okay, so we created, I explained to you Five-ish, which is the character that URA created. It's a Jewish charity, Jewish organization, and yeah, he looks like Hirohito, but that's a totally separate point. These Jewish $5 bills, these Orthodox Jewish $5 bills, are flying to Israel, and then the plane crashes. Okay. And they land on an island. Now they're on the island, and there's a guy on the island who's like, my name is Moshe. I'm Jewish just like you. and everybody on this island hates the Jews. Okay, this is supposed to be something that I guess kids are watching for some reason. I don't know.
Hell, there also isn't any mention by any other islander made about Jews, which makes me think that Moishe is just a guy who sucks and is disliked for different reasons and just attributes it to anti-Semitism. I also wanted to mention that Moishe's outfit is weirdly specific. Not in its details, those are fairly scant, but the fact that it seems to include an Austro-Hungarian military ski cap for some reason, I found very bizarre. I don't note this because it's particularly important, but rather because it raises questions as to where they got his model from. Of all the models on all the asset stores, why it was an Austrian mountaineer circa 1915 that was chosen, I have no idea. Why instead did they not choose any other kind of generic soldier? And why did they choose something that I only recognize because I play way too many Hearts of Iron 4 mods? Anyway, the Five-ish-I, anyway, try to escape before being captured and taken back to chicken wire fences.
Get in there with the chickens. Where you belong.
Which is another thing about the supposedly lost colony I found strangely reminiscent of the industrial nature of the Holocaust. But just as the Five-ishes are going to be put on trial, a helicopter piloted by Boris, another Five-ish, swoops down to announce their arrest. In exchange, the islanders are offered a large chest of coins that the king is told are apparently edible.
They're very good, Your Highness. You'll like them.
Why does he sound like that? He does not. I'm sorry. Moishe, yes, Jewish name. Okay. Doesn't look Jewish at all. Kind of looks like he might hate the Jews. And also on top of that is dressed up in a very weird garb and doesn't sound in any way, shape, or form like this is a villain. This is the most anti-Semitic animation I've ever seen. If you laugh, you're anti-Semitic and I'll unfollow. I'm not laughing. I'm dead serious about this. None of this is weird to me. None of this is strange in any way, shape, or form. I think this is normal and good.
Shiny, valuable, but most importantly, edible.
I don't know. That then finally concludes our Five-ish story in the animated realm, but it continues into the aforementioned auction. Every year, Ura hosts a charity auction that is really just a raffle. It's almost comically corrupt in terms of prizes offered to the point where it's basically just gambling. Just as I watched the Five-ish TV show, I also watched the Five-ish charity from 2023 and recorded what happened during it. I've been to a couple charity auctions myself. My memory consists mainly of watching people bid on gift baskets, memorabilia, or gift cards to sums of maybe $300 at the most. They were social events, either for a public school or a local nonprofit, where donors came to mingle. Ura also does charity auctions, but the way they organize these events is in another galaxy compared to my experience and the experience of many others. I'm just going to cover the auction and telethon for now, but the online auction is both the easiest and hardest to explain. So, it's not unheard of to pick up an item at a charity auction for below market rate. That's sometimes the incentive. For example, you buy a rare baseball card that got donated to a charity auction. There's some upsides to the benefiting institution in terms of taxes and ease of processing. Ura takes it to a completely new level. Ura auctions themselves don't work like auctions at all. Like I said, they're basically a sweepstakes or raffle where donors buy tickets that are then randomly drawn. The other main difference is the prizes. Where others have donated items with somewhat subjective market price, Ura charity auctions seem to primarily have a different kind of prize. Cash, not collectible buffalo nickels, not a $2 bill signed by Richard Nixon. Large sums of money that Ura gives to its winner. Of the 49 potential prizes, 15 of them were just money. That doesn't include the other prizes, many of which were just a step removed from being a transfer of money. Here's a list of the auction items that you can win for as little as $5 that are just straight up, undeniably money. In fact, one host points out that
I don't think this is funny at all. I'm visibly shaking my head.
One winner spent $500 on tickets and made their money back 100 times over. Here's a short list of 15 prizes. $25,000 cash. $7,000 Visa gift card. Five-ish cash, which is $5,555. $100,000 bonus. Daily cash. $50 a day for 6 months for $9,000.
He's dying. Five-ish is dying. How is this funny? The anthropomorphic $5 Five-ish is dying. They are literally burying it under Dollar bills. Oh, you think that's funny? I don't.
In total.
He's drowning in money. They're killing him. He's suffocating.
MasterCard. Weekly each. $100 a week for 1 year, or $5,200. $36,000.
It looks like he's literally gasping for air as he's being crowd crushed. Save me!
Fat check, which is $6,130. Investment portfolio, parentheses, $10,000. $18,000 cash. Pick 50K. Allows you to pick one of 5 hidden cards, each worth $5, $50, $500, $5,000, or $50,000. Yearly cash. $1,000 every year for 10 years, for a total of $10,000. Instant 50K for $50,000. 10 of the 50 prizes are some form of guarantee and help paying for a specific bill or expense with a listed value. Choice items from that selection include rent and mortgage, an Amazon spree, and, quote, living expenses. 6 prizes are a trip to Israel, either for a holiday or just covering the ticket price of a dozen people. 11 prizes are what I would consider to be desirable for most people, even outside the community URA serves. These include items such as a Toyota Sienna, a fine silver, or a vacation anywhere. I also have to mention what is by far the strangest item in the last list on that count, which is $8,500 that goes towards a bunker or safe room on your property. Well, myself, a Gentile, I never felt like having a secured bunker in your backyard is something that would be more appealing to the Jewish people I know. I mean, if I got offered a bunker for $5, would I turn it down? The answer doesn't have much to do with my ethnicity or religion, and really is just more a question of how cool I think having a bunker would be. The final 7 items are the only one I could find that were related to the local Orthodox community. These include things like a Sefer Torah and a year of $200
No, I'm not. No.
Every week towards Shabbos.
No.
One prize among these
No.
is the so-called Loser's Prize, which is a limited edition sweatshirt which features 5-ish surrounded by I'm a Winner, URA 2023 auction. Another part of the live stream that I wanted to talk about was an advertisement for another URA organization that shows up halfway through. And by being an URA organization, it is inherently one that is funded by Cars for Kids. Rebbitzins, I think I'm pronouncing that right, is a site that facilitates the traditional Orthodox Jewish shidduch, where young singles are matched with each other by members of the community. For a religious group that is strictly divided along gender lines and does not evangelize itself, the shidduch is a method for maintaining this tight social cohesion. In essence, the shidduch system is one of the only institutional forms of arranged marriage still in the United States. The shidduch is also a model that is in crisis. Creatively named the shidduch crisis, many in the Orthodox community fear that there is a decline in the number of marriages overall, which is being spearheaded by a drop in shidduch marriages. Looking into this, the conclusion that I saw reached by observers is that a high dropout rate of the religion picking its...
Would you turn down a free bunker? Never. I'm pro bunker, Enver Hoxha style, okay? Yes. Ura, Enver Hoxha, we're bunker maxing.
By parents, and the generally dehumanizing nature of having your partner pick for you, as technology tears down more social barriers, are contributing to this crisis. Men are also less willing to marry, which combines with the higher male tendency for leaving Orthodox Judaism to make women in the shidduch system much more susceptible to being objectified, both by potential partners and often the woman's own parents, trying to sell her in a buyer's market. Rebbitzins seeks to fix part of that crisis by providing a more...
This is marketed towards American Jews? No. No, not even. This is just marketed towards American Jews in an Orthodox community in Lakewood, New Jersey. Okay? I mean, there are plenty of American Jews in this chat. Ask them if they've either ever heard of this or if this would be in any way, shape, or form appealing to them. And you will very quickly find out the answer is fuck no. Why would like a random, like think about the American Jews that have been on my broadcast. Like think about presenting this to Felix Biederman or Noah Culwin to be like, hey, would this be appealing for you? Would you like random bunker in Tel Aviv? And then they'd be like, no. I mean, this would be appealing to Felix, but in a very different way. He would appreciate this probably in a totally different way.
Or streamlined and supportive shidduch process to parents. In the promo played during the telethon, it is made clear that the purpose of Rebbitzins is...
Weird that you didn't bring up Brace? Yes, there's a reason why I didn't bring up Brace, because Brace is Brace already has a bunker. No, I'm just kidding. All right,
to
let's
reinforce the Shidduch system with their services. Despite a red background that brings to mind online dating services and romantic music, Rebbitzins is part of a deeply conservative tradition. As I previously mentioned, the Shidduch system does not favor women. More than just the demographic issues that make women outnumber men in the community, women who are married using the Shidduch system are being placed firmly inside a deeply patriarchal community structure. The most standing example of this fact is that Orthodox Jewish women are generally not allowed to seek a divorce. Only their husband can initiate that process. This can result in creative solutions where gangs of Orthodox men are hired on behalf of Orthodox women unsatisfied with their marriages to kidnap and convince the husbands who are refusing this divorce. The practice was the subject of the 3rd episode of The Sopranos.
Called Hasidim. Hasidim, but I don't believe them.
I mean, that's not funny. That's not a good joke. That's very bad.
What's he want, this titleman? He wants a divorce for his daughter. You know about this shit?
Ron, trust me. You don't want to do business with these people.
He said there's 25 large in it if we can get him this here get.
You know, there's an old saying amongst Jews. When a Jew gets a divorce, even the altar sheds tears.
Unfortunately, most Orthodox women aren't able to hire roving gangs or the Soprano crime family. While studies on the topic in American Orthodox Jewish communities are rare, it's found that the Orthodox community in Israel had high rates of domestic abuse, far higher than the average. A study from the University of Puget Sound noted the relationship between adherence and violence. Domestic violence is harder to escape for more religious women because of their strict adherence to the halacha. Despite Ura being more modern than other strains of Orthodox Judaism, the leadership still maintains a deeply conservative view towards marriage. Ura founder...
This is where I also have to give you guys an additional piece of information that many of you are familiar with if you've been watching for long enough, but oftentimes comes across as strange. Now, you would think that Orthodox Judaism is the original strand of Judaism, that it's been around for as long as Judaism has been around for. But it's actually the opposite. Judaism has been around for thousands of years, whereas Orthodox Judaism has only been around for a couple hundred years, almost 200 at this point. It was invented in Eastern Europe, and it's actually the most modern version of Judaism. It's basically Wahhabism. Yes, it's Wahhabism for Jews, pretty much. And the reason why, it's younger than the United States of America, which is a relatively young country. And the reason why, if you were wondering why, like, Orthodox Judaism has, all of these like different things that you wear and stuff like that doesn't really fit in places where a lot of Orthodox Jews now live. Boca Raton, Los Angeles, New York. You're like, what the fuck? Why are you wearing so many different clothes that don't really fit the climate where you live, or Israel? That's because it was invented in Eastern Europe. It makes a lot of sense when you realize that it was invented in Eastern Europe as a newer version that is more fundamentalist of the OG line of Judaism. When you're like, why are you wearing a bearskin hat? It's 100 degrees in fucking Tel Aviv. That's because it makes sense for Ukraine, Eastern Europe in general. Doesn't necessarily make sense for many of the places that Orthodox Jews now live in.
Chaim Mintz said so himself in November
style, bro.
2023,
You don't understand. True.
answering a question about the roles of men and women in a statement summarized by Ura as, "The man makes the decisions because he has the Torah knowledge to back him up."
There's no boss in Jewish marriage. We'll put it as most wives like a husband as a leader, because a husband who is...
You've never had sex because you don't have one of those hats? Yes, I think the hats are actually kind of dope. I feel like there's no way for me to acquire one without people considering me to be anti-Semitic. So I'm just not going to I'm just not going to get one, but I do want one. It shows to the rest of the group that you have had sex. It's a marriage hat. For those of you who don't know, if you see those big hats, that implies that the person has been married. I think it's cool that you're like, yeah, this is my pussy getter hat. Like, I am hatless and will remain hatless. But yeah, that's what it means. It's like, it's one of those situations where you liking those hats is your most gentile option. They smell really fucking bad in the summer if you don't take care of it properly. I think it's cool. It looks cool. That and the tefillin, both of those things look cool. The tefillin makes you look like a Muslim Spartan. Okay, they do the Sparta wrap, and then it has a little Kaaba at the top. You know, that's just my own personal preference. Anyway, let's continue.
He's a Torah, and he studies Torah, and he knows what the laws of the Torah are. Usually he knows more than the wife knows.
Statements like this point to a phenomenon called Haredization, where modern Orthodox communities have become increasingly observant of traditional practices. The growth has been on top of a high base level of poverty as well, that by some counts is equal to that of Detroit. The Orthodox community is known for higher poverty rates, while also helping one another very frequently, but this cannot sustain a growing community. Luckily, URA exists to promote the interests of Lakewood residents. By comparing the Lakewood city budget for 2021 with URA's operating expenses in the same year, my math showed that URA spends the equivalent of 23.5% of the city budget on its own project. URA runs a rather sophisticated operation for giving to its community. The Salvation Army Worldwide Office grants roughly 71% of its operating expenses to other organizations, and the Jewish community for the Foundation of Greater West Metro New Jersey gives almost 85% of its operating expenses away. URA only gives 12.7% of its operating expenses away. Over 13 million of the 28 million in 2021 operating expenses went to salaries, miscellaneous payroll obligations, and office expenses. But given the aforementioned insular nature of URA, these are almost definitely all being paid to Lakewood residents. Paying so many salaries creates a sort of Ouroboros of local investment that has coincided with the aforementioned boom that Lakewood has been experiencing in recent years. URA bolsters the yeshiva system of private religious schools by making them a more appealing option for parents, either by making them cheaper or by otherwise enhancing their facilities. Meanwhile, the yeshiva push has put the Lakewood School District into a financial death spiral. By using legal loopholes, yeshivas have been able to demand bus services for 30,000 private school students from a service that only educates around 5,000 public school students. This is a cost that a large organization like URA could feasibly take on, maybe by providing, I don't know, cars for these kids. All this, the telethon, the shidduch, the buses, Five-ish, is being funded by the dollars of mostly unaware people across the country donating to Cars for Kids. That is my main problem with URA. It's the deception. If you took all of what I just described and told me it was being funded by some billionaire donor, my tune would change, not because I would approve of it now anymore on a personal level, but because the externalities are being contained to one person. But given the number of times you've heard that Cars for Kids jingle, we all know it's not contained to one person. There are also plenty of Christian charities that misuse government funds and deceive the public. Hell, there are so many that the idea of a pastor with a private jet has become a joke for half the country and a religious reality for a significant minority. When compared to the sheer scale of fraud in the name of Jesus Christ that has been committed in this country, URA's tens of billions seem laughable.
What are you going to do? It's the American way, baby. It is. It really is.
With the $5 bill, huh? Put it on your pile with all your other fucking bill?
Probably, yeah. But those charities receive plenty of scrutiny for their actions, even if it doesn't work all the time. So as long as the start of that infamous jingle is prompting tens of thousands across the country to punch the power buttons on their car radios as fast as they can, URA remains everybody's problem. Hey, thanks for watching the video. This was something that I adapted.
That was a really good video. Respect. Dude even dropped. Dude, only in the United States of America in the year 2026 of our holy Lord do you have a guy who does an effort post on a Jewish charity, doesn't hit any like anti-Semitism notes whatsoever, issues a content warning in between, and previously promotes Cumtown at the same time. This is why I think like Woke One just simply did not fucking work. Okay? This is why Woke One didn't work. And we need something new. We need something better. Woke 2.0 needs to factor all of the unique nature of progressive politics into it. Like, think about it. He literally issues a content warning for domestic abuse, okay? He issues a trigger warning, a content warning for domestic abuse, and he's a Cumtown enjoyer. This is what woke 2.0 looks like. This is what woke always was. This juxtaposition exists, okay? Anyway, I really like it. A bit of casual Islamophobia. Oh, you're showing the...
Step through the detector, please. Have your boarding pass and ticket available.
Ooh, I cannot wait to go to Eretz Yisrael for Hanukkah and visit my cousins, the Shekels.
All right, enjoy your flight.
Like, that's very clearly an Orthodox Jewish man that they put, like, what they want to make seem like a keffiyeh on his head. Oh, the TSA is so woke. They let Arab Muslims in. They let Arab Muslims in to do terrorism into Israel all the time. Wait, is this the guy who does Moss Planet? Oh, creator of the Moss Planet YouTube channel. Opposition researcher Styled Ape. Okay. Nice. Yeah, shouts out. New 5-ish and Cars for Kids in danger. This video is part 2 in an ongoing series on URA. We watched part 1. We can watch part 2 now too. Oh, he made it with Means TV. Yeah, this guy's dope. Makes sense. Makes sense that he's a cum boy. Makes sense that he is both a cum boy and also at the same time a Chapo head, and now has his own podcast too. On August 12th, 2020, a devastating fire destroyed the main dining room and kitchen at the Zone Girls Division.
As I covered in my last video, Cars for Kids is basically a front for the religious charity URA. It takes donated cars from mostly unsuspecting vehicle owners and either sells or scraps them to pay for real estate investments, 5-ish, and sometimes summer camps for kids, but only if they're Orthodox Jews.
Bro, he released this video one day before the Iran war, calling the Iran war he knows all. Have you said your Tam Am Israel Chai today? Of course, Am Israel Chai once again. I just wanna put that out there. Am Israel Chai. Okay, you already know it, baby. You know what it is. Am Israel Chai all day, every day.
Naturally, this makes the organization a massive conduit for shady deals and lavish spending. URA operates 2 facilities in the Catskills Mountains of New York, collectively referred to as The Zone. These are actually old ski resorts that were bought and converted into summer camps by URA. I said 2 facilities because they are not gender segregated by cabins, but by geography, as the boys' camp is located in Delaware County, New York, and the girls' camp is located 8 miles down the road in Schoharie County. This puts it more than an hour away from the closest airport, and virtually inaccessible by any method other than personal car or chartered bus. And there are plenty of reasons why you wouldn't want to come here. While the Catskills is no doubt beautiful, it is not just these mountains that makes the zone notable. Instead, it is the scandals inside the zone itself that are a justification for looking closer. Where to even start? Probably with safety hazards. See, there comes a certain set of upsides and downsides when you build a summer camp in an old ski resort. Upsides include more sophisticated housing, extensive facilities, and the potential to commune with a ghost that will help you get your tight 5 down. Downsides include older buildings that are more prone to issues, untrained counselors that can mishandle equipment, and that ghost is actually just the result of a gas leak by the aforementioned downsides.
Dear Mom and Dad, I've been at a sleepaway camp for almost 3 weeks, and I'm getting very scared.
Welcome to Sleepaway Camp. Someone is watching you. Someone is waiting for you.
5-ish!
Someone
5-ish, no!
wants to scare you to death. Sleepaway Camp. You won't be coming home.
We have to say 5-ish.
URA had to evacuate its boys' zone camp because of a carbon monoxide leak in one of its dorm buildings. This wasn't a lapse in protocol that caused the state bureaucracy to seize on a long-awaited opportunity. The gas leak was only reported because the entire dorm building spent one morning in various states of disorientation, including several campers passing out. 53 campers and staff members had to be taken to the hospital after inhaling potentially lethal quantities of carbon monoxide. Schoharie County's Director of Emergency Services said that the campers were still very lucky, as if the leak had happened in the middle of the night, there could have been a worse outcome. I'll let you figure out what that worse outcome would be on your own. Even worse, this wasn't the only near-fatal incident experienced by campers in the zone in the past 5-ish years. In July of 2020, the girl zone had to be evacuated because of a kitchen fire that burned down the dining hall. This was during the height of the COVID-19 restrictions, where camps like the zone were fighting tooth and nail to shirk any social distancing orders through technicalities. It was also not the first time URA had faced criticism for not following fire safety codes. This is because it was back in 2014 that the city of Jefferson in Schoharie County, New York, filed a lawsuit against URA for allegedly having multiple fire and building codes violations. Even as COVID...
I missed the first video. How can I go back and see your reaction? Great question, my friend. You were a subscriber for the past 3 months. Maybe if you subscribe again, you'll have the answer. That's right. The Piker Broadcasting Service runs no ads. It's funded entirely by you, the people, and it's always going to be for you, the people. No ads here. Very few sponsorships, if at all. The Piker Broadcasting Service, the People's Broadcasting Service, is funded by your voluntary contributions in the form of a $6 a month subscription or a free one in the form of a Twitch Prime. Use it here on your favorite independent news outlet today. A subscription, or a gifted subscription if you're fortunate enough to receive one, will allow you to use emotes all around the platform. Will allow you the option to gift, or will allow you the option to send me links and also rewind the broadcast. That's right, Piker Broadcasting Service for tomorrow's news today. PBS, the People's Broadcasting Service. For you, the people, by you, the people. Thank you.
COVID restrictions were winding down. The girl zone was not done with negligent fire safety practices. In February of 2020, 3 of the buildings at the girls zone were destroyed in a fire that nearly spread to a 500-gallon propane tank. In case you're curious, here's what a 500-gallon propane tank exploding looks like. Thankfully, this happened during the winter when the kids weren't at the camp, but there's a pattern of neglect at URA's camps that is undeniable. We have no real signs that this is going to change, and the idea of anyone sending their kids to this inferno makes my stomach turn personally. The loophole that was utilized by the zone to remain open during the pandemic involved a reclassification of the summer camps as temporary residences, although if the parent stayed, was inconsistent at best. This practice was not limited to the zone, but it seems like they're the ones who have put the most children in danger because of it. According to a report by Schoharie County's public health director, Dr. Amy Gildemeist, busloads of unaccompanied children were being dropped off at the zone in the 2020 summer season. Curiously, the director of communications for the zone, who has the same role at Cars for Kids, Wendy Kirwan, defended the operation by stating that minor staff members went home at the end of the night and that the campers were accompanied by their parents. If you remember how far away from any major population center this is, the story doesn't really add up. A drive from Gilboa, a nearby city in upstate New York, to New York City itself, the closest major metropolitan area, for these counselors who have worked at the zone while following COVID-19 restrictions, many of them would have to spend roughly 1/3 of any given day just shuttling to and from the zone. Most of these kids are not from upstate New York. In fact, many of them are pretty notably from New Jersey, which is even further away. So the idea that this wasn't an overnight camp is pretty laughable at some point. This is where Cars for Kids is sending your money, by the way. These are the titular kids that are being helped by your car donations. It seems like the main way that these children are being helped is by giving them the opportunity to spend their summer in these camps that are constantly filling their buildings with gases and burning everything down because of negligence. I'd argue that a better use of this money for children's welfare would be to just burn it or dump it into the middle of the ocean, because it seems like the way that it's being spent right now is actively endangering children. And that is not why people are donating their money to Cars for Kids. It's not even why Orthodox Jews are supporting this organization in the first place. And humans aren't the only ones suffering at the zone either. See, the zone is also home to a variety of different animals. The biggest draw seems to be horses, which feature prominently in promotional material as a draw for the camp. Unfortunately, it seems that these horses are not treated all that well. According to a statement by Rosemary Farm Sanctuary that links to a Facebook post outlining the details, these horses were recovered from the zone. The animals were found starved, exhausted, and branded by hot irons. It was only when one of the horses died from being overworked that the person leasing the horses to the camp got involved. Ultimately, it was only because of this intervention that the abuse even came to light in the first place. Thankfully, these horses have found a new home with the help help of Rosemary Farm, an equine rescue resource, but the fact that it took one death of these horses for any investigation to occur is troubling to say the least. It may also be the cause of an abnormally high number of exotic bird sightings around Stamford, New York, where the zone is located. While looking for any anecdotes that might lead me to new stories in the Facebook group Stanford, New York Neighbors, I noticed that a few people seem to have spotted some kind of exotic bird walking around their yards. I'm not saying it's necessarily an escapee of the zone, but given all the information we have on the treatment of animals there, it's not impossible. This is also where I'd like to mention that the zone has uploaded a video to their YouTube channel that shows what appears to be a turkey and a peacock having some kind of disagreement in one of the buildings. It looks like there's
cockfight. That's crazy. I went to a Jewish day camp like this, and the head rabbi accused me, a 14, 15-year-old girl, of having nude photos on my flip phone with no camera. One of the most bizarre experiences of my life. Jesus Christ.
Ball in the background there. And the video is just titled Cockfight at the Zone, which, you know, not to be too quippy, but Jesus Christ, I mean, that's not what I would want to see on a camp's YouTube account. Exactly 1 week after the dining hall went up in flames, Ura had a new problem related to the girls' zone camp. But before I get into the details of that, I needed to return to an old friend.
Thank God. Thank God. Oh my God, I was worried. I was worried about Five-ish being endangered, and it has been brought to my attention that it's alive. Okay. That's good.
The Five-ish lore is far more extensive than I previously thought, and it now includes Five-ish corresponding with Barack Obama.
We're under attack with WMDs, weapons of mass depression, and this is only getting worse, and this is getting very serious, and I think the only one who can help is Five-ish.
And way more anti-Indian racism.
Obamacare, Citibank, Delta, Cars for Kids, and Kosher Delight. I understand you may be having an issue. Be quick because we have an overwhelming influx of cranky callers.
Alright, so this is another one of their Schmorg videos. Starting off, we can see that we are somewhere in Iran.
What the fuck?
There is a 3D model of what I believe to be Dr. Wily from Mega Man in a helicopter. After Dr. Wily lands, we then see a vaguely Arab-looking man T-posing inside of the spine of his camel before the camera pans just enough to obscure the location of his legs. There's also a character that is with Dr. Wily whose name I don't know if we ever get. He talks in a voice that I can only describe as aggressively nasal.
And it's all the Google Maps.
Oh, shawarma!
After introducing themselves to each other, the presumably Iranian man welcomes them to a secret laboratory. Now, it's not that I suspect Uruk.
See, they're not real ball knowers. Like that's just like unsophisticated racism. You should say, "Oh, Kubi Day." That's how you know, though. These guys are all Lakewood because they've just never been around Persian Jews, because they would at least know a little bit about like Iranian culture if this was Tehrangelis, you know what I mean? If they had any like connection to the Persian Jewish community in Tehrangelis, they would know better. They wouldn't say, "Oh, shawarma," because they're trying to do, this is Iran, right? They would go, "Oh, Kubi Day." That's the, you know. Thank you, Benjamin Netanyahu. I love Kubi Day. I will do terror. That's what the guy would be saying. Law, you're being racist now. I mean, this is a distinction. It's an important distinction to be. Don't make me put the fucking doctor's coat back on, okay? This is Dr. Jihad. I have a PhD in racism. I'm telling you, okay? Unlike Dr. Abdullah Syed, I actually had to work for my degrees, okay? I have a doctorate in jihad and a PhD in racism. And as a PhD in racism, I know all of the different kinds of ways of being racist. And these guys are not being racist in the right way. Okay.
Cared about this in the slightest, but I will note that the Iranian scientist is dressed in a traditional thwab and keffiyeh in a way that is reminiscent of Saudi and Gulf state formal wear. Iranian officials, for the most part, wear Western-style suits and occasionally turbans. Obviously, the creators of this cartoon are pretty racist and aren't ashamed of it, but it also just feels so lazy to not even put the effort in to make this guy look like...
See, this guy called it out too. This is also the other part of this. Like, they made them... Yeah, they made them like a Gulf, like Qatari or Saudi, or they did not factor in that this is supposed to be an Iranian nuclear facility. If you're in an Iranian nuclear facility, this is a Saudi guy, right? Like, it's not supposed to be a Saudi guy. Classic mistake. Dr. Jihad would never make this mistake.
Evil Iranian cleric or something like that. Surely there's plenty of source material to at least make a 3D model that vaguely resembles like an ugly version of the Ayatollah. It's like if you were making a racist political cartoon about Zoran Mamdani, but you kept depicting him wearing a fez. Like, it doesn't really hit hard, and all we can tell—
It doesn't, because he's an enemy of Turks. Everyone knows. Zoran Kwame Mamdani, enemy of the Turk, famously. Just so you guys know, I tried to petition him. I tried to lobby him. I even brought it up beforehand. I wanted him to pick up where Eric Adams, Adamoglu, left off. Our Albanian Turk, Eric Adams, he was taken out. And unfortunately, Zohran Kwame Mamdani is an enemy of the Turk. Do you own a fez? And am I racist for asking? Yes, I do own a fez. And yes, you are racist for asking.
That you're racist. Anyway, would it surprise you that less than 90 seconds in, this cartoon for children is implying that Iran is manufacturing nuclear weapons?
As we are in the final stages of developing something that, let's just say, rhymes with schmuclear weapons.
This is especially ironic because Israel, the only Middle Eastern country to actually possess nuclear weapons, that will indiscriminately bomb your population centers if it thinks you might hypothetically be building one, receives plenty of gap year students whose tuition is paid for by URA.
There's a golden land that's promised to our fathers, where the streets are stoned and we kiss the ground. This is
I thought he was
God's.
gonna say, where we kiss our daughters. This is God's country. Wait, that's AI. A lot of the previous ones, that wasn't AI. This is AI. Okay.
We pray.
Oh my God, they did Southern Country Slop, but for Israel. Oh my God. Oh my God, they did country music for Israel. God, what is happening? I don't know if it's any better though, to be honest, because I've seen Israeli music, and let me tell you, this might be, just slightly better than that, which is, still a war crime, but maybe not as bad as a war crime as like regular homegrown Israeli techno music.
For peace and miracles keep falling, they can send their missiles, but we're not scared of nothing.
After some more reminders of why a rogue state in the Middle East that has nukes must be quickly sanctioned and invaded, the actual grand plan is revealed. It's a bomb that makes people all over the world sad and grumpy, which is somewhat elaborated on in a pretty god-awful musical number. I don't even mean god-awful in the way that a musical number might be over the top or at least be annoyingly catchy. It just sucks. It sounds like someone playing Jafar at Disneyland making up a song to buy time as he desperately waits for Jasmine to finish with her smoke break.
Creatures of the world unite. Stand up for your grumpy rights. We're happy when everyone is sad. Wonderful. I'm thrilled your mood is bad.
He looks like Stale 2000. No, not Stale 2000. He's going to do another musical number about how live stream fails must restore his moderation.
I also have to say that if you told me to come up with an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory on the spot, I don't know if I could beat a bomb that makes you need to go to therapy. That's almost worse than Five-ish in terms of blatant anti-Semitism.
But that's crazy. That's all nonsense. That's nothing but a racket for the Jews.
Speaking of which, Five-ish wakes up in a panic. He's late for shul. When he gets there, he encounters a group of 3 men who I believe have the same face model as the old man from the movie Up. These old men are complaining about how awful a bunch of things in their lives are, but given the fact that old people love doing that, Five-ish doesn't seem to think much of it. Five-ish then walks around the synagogue and sees his middle school age friends from the last episode in all their PlayStation 2 rendered glory. They walk into a classroom to inquire about why everyone is seemingly so grumpy. After this is a scene showing a human child giving a cupcake to her Five-ish teacher.
Would you feel better if I gave you my cupcake that I bring for a snack?
Oh, thank you. How did you know I needed
Why are there so many random dollar bills that are also humans and Orthodox Jews in Israel? What? No one has described this to me. I need to understand. Why are some humans and some dollar bills, $5 bills in particular? Why? Why are the $5 bills Orthodox? Fuck. I can't do this anymore. I need this question to be answered right now. Why? Why is...
Which the teacher loves so much and seemingly brings her to what I can only really describe as the whimpers of someone who is recently starving or broken up with.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I really need this truck.
What?
We cut to Five-ish in his car with these 3 boys, where they get the news that everyone in the world is sad and that all the happiness is gone.
The president has declared a state of emergency. Special correspondent Finnegan is on the scene live in New York City, where the epidemic seems to have hit the worst. Finn?
Thank you, John, for that great news. Ooh, what a great story to be covering.
After Five-ish and the boys try to figure out what to do, there's another cut to the offices of Yapchick Consulting, which, given who works there, should be called Yap Dollar Consulting because it's staffed by Five-ishes. One of them, Shlomo Meckel, is taking a call from someone asking what they should do if they run for president, to which he is told, get a motorcade, before taking another call, this time from Barack Obama.
Yom Kippur logic. I'm behind on stream, but they're $5 because of the Yiddish male name, Five-ish, pronounced the same from the Greek name Phoebus. Wait, really? I can't tell if you're fucking with me or not. Also, this is a new Obama, and it seems like this Obama has one ear that's larger than the other.
Who asks him what to do about this attack by a WMD, a weapon of mass depression.
Well, you see, we're under attack with WMDs, weapons of mass depression, and this is only getting worse, and this is getting very serious, and I think the only one who can help is Five-ish.
Of course, Five-ish, yeah.
Obama then gets Five-ish's phone number from Meckel and is able to contact him on his private line. The president informs Five-ish that he and his associates are the only ones in the world not affected by the WMDs, and that he needs him to find a solution.
Oh, is this Mr. Phoebish?
There's no Phoebish here. My name is Five-ish.
I'm sorry, Mr. Five-ish.
Ooh, what? Mr. President?
Obama then breaks down in tears on the phone with Five-ish.
But you...
Something that I think is lost here is the fact that they're not depicting Obama as a virulent Jew hater, which obviously a lot of people in the pro-Israel community absolutely believe. So in a weird way, this is like kind of woke, unless this back and forth is taking place, or unless this video was made, not the video depicting, or not the video, talking about Five-ish, but maybe the original video was made before the JCPOA was finalized, because like post 2015, it was a non-starter. Obama became the #1 op in the Zionist community. Obama was considered the biggest enemy of Jewish people. So this conversation would normally not take place in the ways that it is. It's like this conversation between Obama and Five-ish would be like Obama saying like, I'm going to kill you, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like he would be like if this was depicted after JCPOA, Obama would be depicted as a Jew hater.
See, we need you, your country needs you, and the world needs you. It's
I think this whole sequence might be a parody of the alleged relationship revealed in Jeffrey Epstein's emails, where Obama called Alan Dershowitz for help in what to do with Israel. The difference is that while Obama is still played by himself, The walking anti-Semitic caricature that has relations with young children is now played by Five-ish. Cut to a parking lot in Lakewood, New Jersey, where the theme of Top Gun plays and a trio of fighter jets flies above. My special aviation interest has to point out that the 3 shots that these jets are in each use a distinctly different model of jet for some reason, versus an F-22, then an F-16, then finally, the general lands his F-35 in the parking lot to talk with Five-ish and his associates. Five-ish insists that they need to get to India as soon as possible, before seemingly ditching the fighters to get on a chartered private jet.
Happy as can be, there's good in everything, and that is why we sing. Let's make everybody happy as can be. It's all in your head now. Even if you're sad, we will blow it away. Forget all your sadness. Happiness is here to stay. Make everybody happy as can be.
After getting to India, they head to the largest call center in the world, so they can spread simcha.
That's how they depicted India? Oh my God, brother. First of all, if I'm in any way, shape, or form connected to Israel, I'm probably not talking about how much trash there is in other countries. Because have you ever seen a Google Street View of Tel Aviv even? With the exception of the parts that you always see, like some of the most developed parts, Israel looks exactly like India. Like in the worst parts of India that people oftentimes show, kind of looks like Israel in many respects. So weird to do that to another country. Like there are a couple touristy areas in Israel that you'll see oftentimes, the boardwalk on the beach where everyone's like, oh, we are here in Israel. We just left the bomb shelter and now we are doing gay sex at the beach. Only democracy in the Middle East. Like that type of shit. Like that's the backdrop that you see is always the same exact fucking boardwalk. But the rest of fucking Israel is just as underserved and broken down as most other countries in the developing world. Okay?
For happiness to the whole world by getting telemarketers on board. There's not much to this part. There's a ton of racist jokes that you can see coming from a mile away. And when he's told by the general that his plan won't work, Five-ish immediately folds, meaning the only purpose of going to India was for Five-ish and his associates to say things that are usually muttered under one's breath.
Would you believe Ura has a video series about a light against the dark of communism? Yes, I do believe that.
In a society that you're not afraid to go with the yarmulke you had, or say to people that you're Jewish, and you don't feel you're endangered, or you're not ashamed to say that. In Moscow, 1917.
Okay, we're not doing this right now.
In a children's cartoon.
May the problem be today, sir?
You see, I was listening to the radio and I heard a commercial that said if I wanted to be happy, I needed a brand new Z-Box. And the new operating system freezes excessively, and it seems it's making me more sad than I should be. Please fix it now.
First, kind sir, I need to ascertain that the system's electrical connection is firmly connected with your local electrical port on the wall of your house.
Five-ish lands in LA, where he tries and fails to get advice from his guitar-playing friend. Five-ish then declares that happiness can only come from Hashem, and tells the general to fly to Miami.
Hold on to your yarmulkes and wipe those frowns off your faces. Help doesn't come from traveling to all these exotic places. It comes from Hashem. We need to keep our bitachon. General, take us to Miami. Yes!
Here he meets what I would best describe as a Five-ish version of Cy Abelman. Five-ish Abelman tells Five-ish that to bring happiness back, they need to make a variety of Shabbos foods. What follows is a musical number featuring those foods singing a parody of Do You Like Waffles? Which, listen, if I'm being honest, doesn't look like food that would instantly or even slowly cheer me up.
Wait. Lahmacun? Is that lahmacun? Do people in Israel, is that actually, do Israelis try to own lahmacun too? Now they're crossing a line? Bro, they have been crossing all lines. What are you talking about? I didn't know they also tried to say that they invented lahmacun. I'd never heard about that. What? How did they sell it? Do they sell it as Israeli pizza? Traditional Israeli foods.
I can't speak for the rest of the world, but it's not particularly appetizing. Cut to Lakewood, where the villains go to a kosher grocery store. Here, the cashier, after getting sad from the sadness WMD, opines that
I'm always so happy. I only make $4 an hour? What? That's minimum wage? I want to go home to my mommy in Guatemala. Ooh la la.
Five-ish and his entourage then enter the store and come to the conclusion that the only way to feel happiness is through the teachings of the Torah. Dr. Wiley and his roommate overhear this and, like any reasonable person, start figuring out how to get past the security at the MetLife Stadium.
We need a counter plan before our hard work goes kaput.
I do love that none of them have even remotely an Iranian accent. They're supposed to be like evil Iranian doctor geniuses who are trying to build a weapon of mass destruction called weapon of mass depression here. And one of them is German and the other one is Stavros for some reason. I don't know why. Like, there's not a single person that they even tried to make look or sound like Iranian.
You can slip me past the security and get me to the podium. I am confident I could promote the virtues of being miserable.
Cut to a spiritual gathering as Dr. Wiley's fellow confirmed bachelor has gotten on stage dressed like a rabbi and is preaching that the Torah teaches us all to be sad. Thankfully, one of the five-ish rabbis, whose name I don't even remember at this point, goes up and rips his fake beard off.
This Rami, that's what he is. He's a Rami. Look, he's a Rami. He's a terrorist then.
Dr. Wiley's
New
gay
Mamdani
homosexual
employee
lover who has
soon.
gay sex with and fucks and kisses and doesn't forget the balls too and taps it on the tongue, exclaims that we have to get out of here, and then the scene basically ends.
Happiness is prevailing. Let's go. Can't we just stay for the smorgasbord? I hear they make nasty pastrami. It's to die for.
So that was how Five-ish stopped Iran's WMD program. I don't know why Israel felt the need to get those bunker busters if it was this easy. Maybe Five-ish was on island time when they needed him most. It's certainly an interesting story. I didn't think they had that kind of clout to get Obama on for a speaking role, but alas, it is not the most consequential thing Ura gets up to. Now, I want to ask you, what powers a city? Because it depends on a lot of factors.
Why is Five-ish doing full frontal nudity? Everyone else insertion clothes? Please explain. I can't explain anything. I can't explain anything to you about why Five-ish does the things that he does. You just have to experience it, okay? Not everything needs a reaction. Sometimes you can just sit back and enjoy the show.
Location, government policies, connection to other cities, and a lot of times it's just plain luck. For the city of Lakewood, New Jersey, it's a combination of all three. The town where the Cars for Kids organization is based has been experiencing explosive growth over the past few decades off this combination. Despite being located in what used to be a small logging town, Lakewood has managed to use its proximity to New York City in a manner that funnels students into its Jewish educational institutions. Beth Merdash Yehovah, BMG, is the second largest yeshiva in the world, and its expansion turned Lakewood into a college town of sorts.
You got
but problems
exposed.
rise for a city growing around a college when that college isn't really improving the productive capacity of its graduates.
It's true. I am the only person that Nandre knows who watches SNL because he needs more cool friends. Because watching SNL is cool.
See, no matter how cynical you are about the role of higher education, there is at minimum the conceit that society as a whole values a college degree. BMG does not fit neatly into that system, at least not intentionally. You know how a lot of tech venture capitalists went to Stanford, but they didn't even necessarily study business or computer science even? Or how people like Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard and unfortunately inspired a lot of guys you went to high school with to do the same thing without having the means to get into Harvard in the first place? This is because elite colleges will naturally attract the kinds of people that are willing and able to seek elite roles. And by bringing them together to commingle, they can find what they need before even graduating. Be that potential connections to investors, highly motivated employees on the ground floor, like Peter Thiel, or to develop your woman judging skills, like with Mark Zuckerberg. Think of this process where entrepreneurs find each other in the same terms that you'd think of the accumulation of nourishing DDT into the bloodstream of a majestic bald eagle.
This is called bioaccumulation. When DDT is sprayed on a marsh, its concentration in the water is very low. DDT is picked up by the plankton living.
Minimum wage in Israel is $12.13 USD an hour. Life is much cheaper there too. The social systems they created work. Poverty rate is basically the same as USA. Stop farming anti-Semitism. That's farming anti-Semitism? Wow, you mean to tell me that the #1 welfare state on the planet actually has better social safety nets than we do here in the United States of America? And we cover their entire fucking defense industry and office industry? Who's farming anti-Semitism between you and I? I simply stated, Israeli chatter, that Israel is not as like modernized or as urbanized as the way people present it. That's all I said. Seemingly it touched a nerve where you're like, no, you don't understand. Israel actually doing very well. Okay. Fuck them. I don't care about them. Fix the USA. Yeah, this is the same chatter that was crying about migration yesterday. Also, none of which I said is even remotely anti-Semitic.
In the marsh, and it accumulates in their tissues. Small fish that eat the plankton get a higher dose of DDT because of the accumulation resulting from eating many plankton during their lifespan. Larger fish that eat many smaller fish receive an even higher dose of DDT. Birds that eat fish, such as this heron, will receive a still higher dose because they eat many fish throughout their lives. This increased concentration of toxic substances in the bodies of animals higher on the food chain is called biological magnification or amplification.
BMG is a very different curriculum from those elite colleges like Stanford and Harvard, but not that different in how its students behave. What I mean here is that BMG is still an elite institution, and it seems to attract students accordingly. Much like Harvard and Stanford, many of these students do not graduate, and much like at those elite universities, it does not really matter. Possibly due to the very traditional nature of Orthodox Judaism, the students that go through BMG tend to overwhelmingly favor real estate when it comes to choosing a career path. An article in the real estate news site, The Real Deal, details how Lakewood's real estate has been supercharged in recent years. Using the arrest of Eli Puritz, a 29-year-old yeshiva graduate who has recently been sentenced to prison for real estate fraud along with his father, Aaron, as an example of how deep the problem of real estate fraud goes. Between just the two of them, over $42 million in restitution has been paid. Eli, for what it's worth, seemed to be extremely and genuinely remorseful about his actions in his quotes given for the article and in the podcast appearance it cites. He places blame on himself for what he did and seems almost relieved at his imminent 2-year prison stint. But Eli did not arrive at this shady deal with just his family connections. In the interview with The Real Deal, journalist Keith Larson provided some context that Eli elaborated upon. But the yeshiva graduates don't have much in the way of formal business education, and so they have to pursue careers with low barriers to entry. Puritz believes nursing homes and real estate fit the bill. It's definitely been a machine that's been on this vicious cycle, and I think that people just look at my story as well as similar stories and just think that it could have been them. What I've been dancing around is what makes the yeshiva system so problematic. They teach their graduates absolutely no real-world skills, but provide them with a vast network of connections. One would hope that the amount of response...
I mean, this is the same as like this is a big problem in Israel as well. Religious institutions that get a tremendous amount of exemptions, including like religious institutions that get exemption from serving in the IDF, cause a major, like it's playing a major role in societal collapse in Israel because all they do is learn about religion. All they do is learn about religious texts and virtually nothing else. This is a real problem in American yeshiva schooling as well. No math, no science, no nothing, just religious text. Okay? In America, it's a big problem in New York and in Lakewood as well. And the reason why it's a big problem is because they're funneling resources that would normally go to public institutions. And because it's a religious school, it's actually... What? Yeah, fuck them. Tell me to get the fuck out of our politics and handle their own shit. What are you saying? Israel is America. You're so fucking dumb. Good job saying the quiet part out loud. What are you talking about? What are you complaining about, man? Black holes move towards my huge dick. My dick is so big, It can't be Ben. It will be our president. Bro, what's wrong with this guy? Even in the Asmongold chat, he's getting fucking timed out because he's just crazy. Bro, dial it back, bro. You sound unhinged. The fuck? Anyway, yeah, he's just he's out of his mind. Anyway, these guys, they don't really teach anything. And that's a big problem.
Responsibility for others' well-being is somewhat proportional to their qualifications and skills. Unfortunately, real estate is an area where this correlation is not enforced and not very common in the first place, especially in Lakewood, where most working-age men were in the yeshiva system at one point. The fact so many of these men chose to get into real estate is not actually all that surprising when you account for all the factors going in. 1. The barrier to entry is nearly non-existent, a requirement for yeshiva graduates who are taught virtually zero transferable skills. 2. Among jobs with low entry barriers, real estate brokerage is
not a big problem for Palestinians, in my honest opinion. No, it's a big problem for Palestinians as well. What are you talking about? As the Orthodox population, specifically the Haredi population, is the only population growth that Israel's currently experiencing. So the less educated the popular base of support for Israel is, the less and the more religious they are, the more they are expansionist and not even remotely invested in like being connected to the outside world at all, and just singularly focused on the greater Israel project. The harder it is to even turn Israel into a social pariah when they make themselves a social pariah personally. A lot of the Haredim who spend all day in the yeshiva are also some of the least nationalists, so who knows? I mean, I'm talking about some of the Orthodox communities. The Orthodox communities are some of the, like, it's not just the Haredim that are the religious communities that are getting religious education. It's just the only area of growth is like people who are invested in expanding the settlements.
Far and away the most lucrative and can guarantee a sizable middle-class income to men even in their early 20s. 3. Orthodox Jews tend to...
That's why I was saying, like, there will be a population collapse in Israel that is imminent, because all of like the well-educated Ashkenazi population that's like dominated Israel for decades is becoming a tiny sliver of Israeli society, even though they've had a boost in population growth through the fall of the USSR. It's still, you know, it's going to turn into a more reactionary country than it is. Sounds crazy to say, but that's why you see support growing for Itamar Ben-Gvir and diminishing for even what's his face, Bezalel Smotrich, for example. Bezalel Smotrich has less support amongst the youth now because they think he's too fucking woke.
Have large families. For example, Eli Puritz already had 2 children he was referring to in the interview he gave, one of whom would have been born around the time he started.
Yo, I actually have a question. You asked Candace about Palestine and his support, but when they're asking Mamdani or stance was, why are they asking a New York mayor a question about Israel? Not rage baiting or anything, but trying to understand why it changed. Been in and out of streams. Great question. Don't think you're actually asking this sincerely. I think you're digging for a quote that you can clip out of context most likely, but I'll answer it regardless. I said, why are they asking a New York mayor if he would travel to Israel? Okay. And I know the answer. New York politics is also deeply intertwined with politics in Israel, same as Los Angeles. If you notice, the questions I asked Nithya weren't specifically about America's relationship with Israel necessarily, but more so about her own personal votes that she's or her own personal decisions as a council member in Los Angeles. Okay. Bro stole my question. What? If you paid close attention to my questions to Nithya, they revolved around her own personal decisions in the past. Okay. Yeah, I said, why did you support anti-BDS measures, for example? Like Americans engaging in a First Amendment protected act to protest Israel and barring them from doing that, barring them from engaging in this First Amendment, barring Los Angelinos from engaging in this First Amendment protected act, is a very American, very Los Angeles specific question that revolves around Israel.
This scheme at age 24. 4. Supporting growing ultra-Orthodox families necessitates higher salaries for the men. Women are allowed to work, and actually do so at higher rates, at least in Israel among the ultra-Orthodox, but still make far less than their husbands on average. All of this squeezes the yeshiva graduate who wishes to make a career for himself into a narrow range of potential jobs, with real estate offering the best returns for the most ambitious. It's easy to see how someone like Eli got wrapped up in this with barely a high school education. So how does this tie into Cars for Kids? Quite easily, it turns out. Ura has been in this real estate game for a long time and has spent millions of donated dollars on various properties. Ura lost over $7 million after supposedly falling victim to a Ponzi scheme. This is compared to the $12 million that they spent on children's programming during the same time period. I say supposedly as Ura apparently used Liam Puritz, the father of the currently incarcerated Aaron Puritz, as their go-to developer. I couldn't find any indication that Lieb was involved in the Ponzi scheme at any point, but this might also just be Ura covering their own ass. Ura also works with retailers through Cars for Kids. They have a brokerage referral program which allows realtors to refer their clients to Cars for Kids and get reimbursed if the client donates the property to Cars for Kids. This has allowed Cars for Kids to accumulate a sizable portfolio of properties. Most appear to be empty lots in semi-rural areas, but with taxes on these being minuscule for Ura's balance sheets, it might be part of a longer-term strategy. In case you thought Ura wanted to keep this under the table, they actually offer learning opportunities for those interested in real estate. It's not totally clear how this program works, but it's not totally kept a secret either. There's more to this, there's more to everything about Ura, but this is the gist of what I could find. Still, sketchy financial dealings are only really scratching the surface when it comes to what makes Cars for Kids / Ura a truly reprehensible organization. Well, his father, Chaim Mintz, is the spiritual leader. Eliyahu Mintz is the brains behind Ura and Cars for Kids when it comes to their day-to-day operations. It's hard to find a definitive picture of a younger or even current day Mintz. He uses Five-ish as a profile picture whenever possible, but does post prolifically on Facebook and to his personal website. We'll get to that in a bit. His Facebook is where you can see some little details about how Cars for Kids is spending their money, like on a Hummer for their Boys Zone summer camp and on Five-ish's Funmobile. To cut to the point, Eliyahu Mintz is a rabid Zionist who takes every opportunity that he can to either deny or justify the atrocities committed by Israel. On his personal blog, he conflates criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism and questions why Amnesty International...
That's so rare for people who defend Israel. That's like, wow. That's so strange. You never really hear that at all from people who like to defend Israel. So I'm shocked that this guy's doing it.
Condemns Israel and not actual human rights abuses. On his other blog, he has like 4 for some reason, he further dehumanizes Palestinians, referring to them only as either Arabs or as the so-called Palestinian people. This is also where he rages against the fact that Booking.com dared to put up warnings for people looking at hotels in the occupied West Bank, which Mintz refers to as Judea and Samaria, implying all of it belongs to Israel. His feelings on this might be connected to his downplaying of statements made by Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel, who called for a Palestinian village to be wiped out because there were no innocent people living there. Beyond the borders of Israel, Mintz has expressed his support for the assassination of Iran's leadership by the United States or Israel itself. He also celebrated the fact that Gal Gadot passed Gigi Hadid in Instagram followers, which is strange for him to do because I thought that Orthodox Judaism wasn't too accepting to the kind of person that cares about the following numbers of female celebrities. It really raises the question of why the head of such a large charity is putting his opinions out here like this. To partially answer the question, I think it's because this organization has insulated itself from public opinion so much that its CEO can say these things on his own blog and not get in trouble for it. Still, it's not the first thing that Ura prefers to keep under wraps. This is a content warning for sexual assault. I'll put up a timestamp for when I stop talking about it. By the time Dorina Sokolovsky settled out of court with Ura, over 6 years had passed. For all these years, Sokolovsky had been pursued relentlessly by the Orthodox community for uploading a video detailing her sexual abuse at the hands of Giddy Kohn-Sheinkopf, one of the counselors at the Girls' Zone. And the issue was repeatedly pushed to rabbinical courts in order to protect Sheinkopf from answering for these crimes as an employee of URA. It was only thanks to the work of people in Zaka, a victims advocacy group working in the Orthodox community, that this case even came to light. Speaking out against abuse in any community is hard enough, but one that prizes insularity and trust as much as the Orthodox community makes coming forward a uniquely difficult emotional, mental, and sometimes even physical ordeal. Zaka actually lists on their website.
There's a very famous case where there was a girl who actually accused her parents, and then I think she died, right? This was in Israel. Let me see if I can find the details. Like very recently, yeah. This was an Israeli minister. Whose daughter accused the family of sexual abuse, found dead. It's from Daily Sabah, a Turkish outlet. But the daughter of Israel's far-right national missions minister, Orit Struk, was found dead in her home in northern Israel, authorities said, as police opened an investigation into the case amid reports that she had recently accused her parents of sexual abuse, and they were doing like weird ritualistic sexual abuse as well. Something fucking crazy. Shoshana Struk, 34, the daughter of National Missions Minister Orit Struk, was found dead Sunday in her home in northern Israel under circumstances that remain unclear, the Jerusalem Post reported. Police have launched an investigation into the death, though officials have not publicly disclosed details about the cause. In recent months, Shoshana had posted several videos and messages on social media in which she claimed that she had been subjected to sexual abuse and exploitation by her parents during her childhood. She also said she had received threats and feared for her safety. In one video statement shared earlier this year, she said that the abuse began when she was very young while growing up in the Jewish settlement of Hebron. She also claimed that as a teenager, she was trafficked and exploited in Tel Aviv, alleging that her father profited from the abuse. Shoshana said she had reported some of the allegations to authorities and had been forced to leave her apartment after what she described as a recent assault. Police have not confirmed the allegations she made publicly, and the status of any investigations related to those claims remain unclear.
Cites a few key difficulties with holding abusers accountable in the Orthodox.
I mean, once again, this is like consistent with all fundamentalist sects. Okay, this is a byproduct of religious fundamentalism in many instances. It's not unique. It's not specific to Judaism in any way, shape, or form. It's just that Israel is a country that is dominated by fundamentalists and is a very far-right country. So you hear a lot of this stuff take place, or you don't really hear a lot about this kind of stuff taking place in Israel because many of you probably don't read Israeli news, and you only hear about Israel from American newspapers and American media, which rarely ever cover this shit at all. As a matter of fact, they choose not to cover this shit at all. I think as Israel's population shifts, they will lose the remaining positive image people have of the country in the West. Israel is seen as a modern Western liberal. Exactly. They're basically considered European. Exactly. That was deliberately done, by the way. The original settlers, the original Jewish settlers were primarily of Ashkenazi descent, and they wanted to create a European image. When they were designing Israeli society, they very carefully constructed this European image because they understood that massive transfer of wealth from European countries was a necessity to build Israel out. They were very secular. They were very progressive in many ways, even though obviously the underlying Zionist ideology still required the extermination of the indigenous population, the Arabs, the Palestinians, right? So, you know, they also were in many respects Soviet aligned as well initially. So that is completely going away. And I think people don't realize that once that goes away, once Israel becomes a complete pariah in and of itself, it's going to make that allegiance with the Western world even more difficult, which is something that I think Benjamin Netanyahu and many others in Israeli society are trying to rid themselves of. They're trying to rid themselves of their over-reliance on Western partners, but I think it's not going to work. Like, Israel will never be an autonomous country. It can't be. It has its entire economy is currently propped up by wealthy benefactors from the West, right? Like, even if even if they didn't get the social cover, the political cover of unbelievably popular Western nations and the unlimited funds that they seemingly receive in military aid from the United States of America and many other Western nations, without all of that, Israel ceases to exist. It can't exist, right? Like, they have a pharmaceutical industry, but when you become a pariah state, the academics are going to leave, right? When you have to focus on your own indigenous defense industry, all of a sudden you can't actually fund the public institutions and academia that is necessary to consistently have for novel chemical compound discovery, for the pharmaceutical industry that is one of the only areas of growth in Israel that makes Israel like a valuable entity. And yes, you might think I'm talking about Israel, but guess what? I'm actually talking about the United States of America, which is going through the exact same motions right now, because the United States of America is also a fascist country that has destroyed its own education and is actively crippling the publicly funded institutions. Israel and America are very similar to one another in many respects. Okay.
To quote, many communities, particularly Haredi, ultra-Orthodox communities, have institutional policies requiring that victims ask rabbis for permission before reporting child sexual abusers to secular authorities. Other leverage points often involve pressuring victims or their families into silence by threatening them with unemployment, eviction, expulsion of their children from yeshiva. The prospect of their children and extended families being ineligible from all of this is that the money donated to Cars for Kids is being used to settle child sexual abuse lawsuits. There's no way around this fact, and it should raise more red flags than even the disregard for children's physical safety at their camps. URA has not publicly acknowledged this lawsuit or offered any kind of explanation for what their role in it was, leaving Zaka as the only reliable source on what transpired. I've reached out to URA, but not gotten a response back yet. Of all the dangers in the zone camps, not all of them are to campers or animals. The most dangerous conditions are endured by the contractors it relies upon. See, subcontracting itself isn't all that unusual, and a summer camp that needs regular maintenance and new construction is going to be utilizing these services fairly often. What's notable about URA is how they treat their contractors.
Yes, you might know Zaka as the religious group that was responsible for a metric ton of atrocity propaganda. Post October 7, they were obviously condemned and criticized internally inside of Israel. Some of those criticisms made their way to the United States of America, but Western press, once again, not unsurprising to people who have been paying attention to this stuff, was a little bit blind and deaf to all of the many criticisms of Zaka.
Contractors, or really anyone outside their immediate organization. According to an anonymous source who lived in the community around the zone I spoke to, people who do work at the zone are routinely underpaid, which would be consistent with protests outside URA's headquarters that occurred back in 2010 and with Facebook comments I've read by local residents. This anonymous source also alerted me to an incident that occurred in one of the ponds owned by URA near the zone. Around 2:30 on Friday, March 31st, 2023, police were called to respond to a call off Scotch Valley Road in Schoharie County, according to the Times-Union. A small boat had flipped and 3 of the passengers were plunged into the icy waters. 2 of them had emerged, 1 could not be found. It would be another day before the body of Juan E. Parco Saez could be recovered. Saez, an Ecuadorian national, was being employed as part of a team installing tiles for the zone, but were not officially employees of the company, a fact that a camp spokesperson was quick to point out. Despite only working as contractors, it was reported that these men were living on site at the camp. It was never clarified why these men were fishing in a pond that had just recently thawed. The fact that these men were living on site in a remote area with potentially hostile employers makes the fact that they were fishing in these conditions seem less and less like a way to pass the time. My source told me that the other 2 men were gone the next day, presumably going back to New Jersey or to their families in Ecuador. At least one can only hope. URA runs a ruthless operation at the zone, but the way in which it is ruthless is not in its staff management. URA runs a ruthlessly efficient operation at the zone, but the way in which it is ruthless is not in its staff management, in its scheduling, or even in its building. In fact, it's pretty bad at all of those things. What it is ruthlessly efficient at is how they have kept this operation going for over a decade without significant public backlash, despite the fact that it is a beneficiary of a nationwide advertising campaign. One can really only hope that this changes soon.
All right. We went on a deep tangent here. That was crazy. Deep in the pocket. And it all started with this. Just kidding. Even though this is very strange. Realistic mustache, human hair, handmade fake beards with invisible soft lace, natural looking costume facial hair. Yeah, Amazon is this Amazon seller is using my likeness to sell mustaches to those who want a little bit of gender affirming care. The what's the point of all of this? Oh, the reason why we looked at it is because Cars for Kids. There's also the rise of online cruelty. There's the Maya TED Talk we're going to be watching as well. You should give a shout out to True Announce Cars for Kids series. Yeah, shout out to True Announce Cars for Kids series. The guy who made it, I think, is the one who was interviewed. Ghost of Kuwait strikes again. Oh, I saw this. Watch 2 U.S. Navy FA-18 fighter jets collide mid-air while performing an air show in Idaho. I assume, what is the price point for this? What this little debacle? Couple hundred, maybe a hundo. 100 mil. Ay, ay, ay. I apologize for showing you this deeply anti-Semitic incident. Obviously, that was $100 million that could have been given to the beautiful nation state of Israel and instead was wasted on the countryside of Idaho. Just saying. Think about that. Those jets could have died fighting in Iran or something, you know? The planes didn't want to go to Iran. They wanted to embrace each other in true love and go out on their own terms. I can respect that. Yeah. What a lot of people don't know is that when jets are feeling very worried, they only do this when they're under tremendous stress and tremendous pressure. It's kind of like whales. You know how like whales beach themselves to do suicide? This is jet suicide. Yeah. Jet expert here. Jets only do this when they're under tremendous pressure. All right. We're going to do a quick hit on Cuba. Trump is turning his attention to Cuba now that he's done with China. Okay. We're going to cover this real quickly, real briefly. American media is back to its old tricks. Unsurprisingly, Donald Trump is coming back from the Beijing summit with not a lot of gains. It was fairly unremarkable overall. It was yet another revelation for those who are paying close attention that America's time in the spotlight as the singular hegemon is coming to an end. And in an effort to reinforce its power around the world, we are looking to strike increasingly vulnerable and smaller targets. Obviously, Iran failed in spectacular fashion. We know that it failed in spectacular fashion. It didn't work at all. It actually, I think, put a significant hit in the confidence that people had in American security cooperative arrangements. So now we're hitting an even weaker target, a much more vulnerable target, the country of Cuba, that happens to be 90 miles off the coastline of the United States of America. Okay, a country that we have dominated through a sanctions terrorism package for the past 60 years for the crime of having a successful socialist revolution, a successful revolution that didn't even start off as a socialist revolution, but turned into a communist one later down the line. Talked about this extensively. I've been to Cuba recently, as you guys know, to deliver humanitarian aid, to see with my own two eyes how devastating America's oil blockade looks like. That oil blockade continued with one exception where Russian ships, one Russian oil tanker was able to go through, cut through the oil blockade and actually deliver some oil to the island, but now they've run out of oil once again. Here is Mark Capito's reporting from Axios. Cuba has acquired more than 300 military drones and recently began discussing plans to use them to attack the U.S. base at Guantanamo Bay, military vessels of possibly Key West, 90 miles north of Havana. They are trying to develop a pretext to engage in a first strike in Cuba. Last week, Yeah. Last week, the United States also decided to indict former Cuban leader Raul Castro, who's like 90 years old. So we're gearing up. We're gearing up to do a special military operation, not dissimilar to the one that took place in Venezuela, but this time in Cuba. Cuba is even less protected than Venezuela, if we're being real. Cuba has a much more stable government than Venezuela does. However, Cuba obviously doesn't have a fraction of the military that Venezuela has, and therefore, this kind of pretext, this kind of justification, this kind of manufacturing consent will most likely lead to a swift military operation, or there could be a decapitation strike, or there could be an extraction mission to extract, again, 90-year-old Raul Castro, and operate a sham trial just like the one that Maduro's going through right now, and then probably implement a puppet state. Last week, the CIA was also in Cuba, having direct talks with Cuba. So it's very clear where this is headed. The Justice Department moved towards an indictment against former Cuban President Raul Castro. AP sources says this was from May 15th, 2 days ago. Financial Times reporting on possible Cuban military op. Donald Trump turns up the heat on Cuba. This is months in the making, as you guys know. And the only thing that held America back was most likely the military failures in the Strait of Hormuz. The quagmire that they got into in the Strait of Hormuz is what stopped them from engaging in this idiotic and unjustifiable and unbelievably cruel initiative on an island nation that we have destroyed personally for decades. I responded to the Mark Capito tweet saying Cuba has never been a threat to the United States. Its only threat was being a successful alternative, a country that fought and won its own sovereignty and dignity. We starved them for that and never stopped. Between this and the New York Times funding piece, we're manufacturing consent for war. Okay? There is no strategic purpose to the destruction of Cuba. It is just rank cruelty. Okay? It's Cold War, boomer vengeance that is still guiding a lot of people. Maybe you can call it like an ethnic tension, like an ethnic vengeance quest led by the Gusano lobby, the American Cubans that still have basically mythologized this alternative Cuba, this alternative history in Cuba. That's precisely the reason why you see many people, including Marco Rubio, including Ted Cruz, including Bob Menendez, falsely claim that their family was persecuted by Fidel Castro. This is not even true. Okay? That's one of the most fascinating aspects of the American Cuban lobby, is that many of them actually didn't even flee. They just kind of personally left under the Batista regime. They didn't like what was going on under the Batista regime. It was very cruel. Batista was our ally, of course, at the time. And they just straight up lie about the fact that it was actually Fidel Castro that took away their land or anything or something like that. And that's why they had to run away to the United States of America. This is a very common thing. There are probably Cuban Americans in this chat right now that have heard this story from their immediate relatives. And if they actually were to dig deep and look at the timeline of when their relatives came to the United States of America, they'd realize that their relatives actually didn't own any fucking property in Cuba at all. And it wasn't seized by the cruel communist Fidel Castro regime at all. They just, their immediate family members came here. Their grandparents came here when Batista was in charge. It's very, very interesting. This is unbelievably common. Combate, Uphold Reality says, R worded Ted Cruz, my father was imprisoned and tortured in Cuba. I hate communists.
Look, my father was imprisoned and tortured in Cuba. I hate communists. It was actually Batista that tortured my dad.
You know, it's very strange. Very strange and very fascinating diasporoid mythos here. Okay? And it is propped up by virtually all of the boomer anti-communist Cubans. My parents still think that Cuba is an authoritarian country, and mind you, we aren't even Cuban, we are Mexican. Yes, that is also because the media instruments in Latin America are unbelievably far right. That's precisely the reason why Morena had to establish its own direct communications channels on YouTube. And the, of course, unbelievably far right network of media in Latin America, backed by massive businesses, will utilize anti-Cuban, anti-communist sentiment as a warning, so that they can associate whatever kind of like social democratic initiatives with by socialist or sometimes communist governing parties with the dangers of Cuba and Cuban authoritarianism. It's very common. Mind you, the anti-communist influencers in Cuba started begging for donation as soon as U.S. aid was cut. Yes, of course, U.S. aid has played a formative role in propping up anti-communist sentiment inside of Cuba. Very common. I mean, this is very well reported on too. Even in the United States of America, there have been so many sometimes hilarious failed initiatives to foment a counter-revolution inside of Cuba, even as recently as a couple decades ago. That it failed. There was a rap project conducted by the State Department. For those of you who don't know, there was literally like they were funding Cuban rappers to rap about how bad communism is. It failed. There was an internet project as soon as the internet was initiated in Cuba, and that was another thing. They were trying to create like a walled garden and intercept the Cuban internet and turn it into like an anti-communist internet, which I think had a lot more success, if we're being real. From what I understand, COVID was a turning point for the counter-revolutionary movement. COVID was a big turning point because pre-2019, the Cuban government gave free access to the internet at parks and on certain locations, right? And then post-2019, they they basically fixed their infrastructure. They improved their infrastructure to allow internet to exist all around the island. And that literally hogified the entire fucking country almost overnight, accelerated by COVID and lockdowns during COVID. There was a big protest. It was one of the first ever massive protests that took place. Well over 10% of the Cuban population left after COVID as well. Tourism collapsed. Things have gotten so much worse, of course. All of this was also accelerated by the 2019 secondary sanctions that the Trump administration implemented that made it unbelievably difficult, even more difficult to trade with Cuba, right? There are numerous instances in our relationship with Cuba where we have specifically designed laws in the United States of America to render trade with Cuba impossible, not only for American companies, but also European companies and other companies in Latin America as well. Okay? This design was purposefully invisible so that you could have plausible deniability that no one wanted to trade with Cuba. Cuba doesn't have a God-given right to trade with other countries. If communism is so good, why can't they thrive? Right? Well, they can't because you made trade impossible with sanctions that you would implement on any country that dared to trade with Cuba. Yeah, I'm Cuban. There was massive protests on July 11, 2021. It was 100% fueled by the CIA, same as the sonic attacks in the U.S. Embassy that was dismantled after to be in office. So yeah, that was what I was going to say. The big turning point was July 11, 2021. There were massive protests. Cuba had very limited counter-revolutionary protests. Cubans are very proud people in general, and it was unlike anything that has ever existed. It was the SOS Cuba campaign that was beefed up by the Gusano lobby here in the United States of America. And there were a lot of arrests that took place in that process, including some people that I know who are still reporters inside of Cuba, the Belly of the Beast guys. They had some of their reporters get arrested in the process too. And yeah, that's this is where we're at. Since 2019, once Trump came back into office, obviously Biden never eased those sanctions at all until the last day in office. It was disgusting what he did. It was like a last fuck you to the Cubans, basically, where he removed those sanctions on his last day in office. Trump immediately put those sanctions back on, And Trump, a couple of months ago, decided to create a full-blown blockade, not just secondary sanctions for any tankers or any ships that touch a Cuban port that won't be able to, that won't be utilized in trade with the United States of America for 180 days. But they just straight up said, we are going to implement a naval blockade to ensure that there is not a single drop of oil that Cuba receives unless it's our oil tankers, because it's not entirely correct to say that Cuba doesn't receive any oil whatsoever. Guantanamo Bay receives oil from the United States of America all the time. Guantanamo Bay is a colonial outpost for the United States of America. Many people might not know that. It also happens to be our, extrajudicious torture prison that we have. And they have energy. They have oil. Yeah. Gitmo needs to have its power, obviously, so they can continue torturing people. Gitmo has a McDonald's on it. So there was one attempt as well from random radicals. 10 Cubans on U.S. boat intended to carry out an armed infiltration, Havana says. If you remember, I covered this already. They rolled up to the Cuban Coast Guard, started opening fire. Cuban Coast Guard killed a couple of them, and then the rest of them were treated in a Cuban facility. But they recovered a tremendous amount of weapons off of those boats as well. Cuban Americans that tried to infiltrate and start a counter-revolution inside of Cuba. It failed. This was a couple of months ago, reported in February 25th, 2026. So even before we went to Cuba as well. Now, yeah, they tried to do another Bay of Hogs, and it failed. Axios just published classified intelligence that the Trump administration says shows Cuba is planning drone attacks on Guantanamo Bay, U.S. warships in Key West. I'm calling false flag. The source is one anonymous senior U.S. official. Reuters could not independently verify the report. Axios' own framing in the article itself states the intelligence could become a pretext for U.S. military action. This is the second time this year a U.S. administration has had classified intelligence leaked about a Caribbean adversary planning attacks on U.S. targets during a period of U.S. military buildup in the region. To which Ruben Gallego said, no country in the current economic and military situation that Cuba is in would ever preemptively strike a superpower like the U.S. This is just propaganda to build a case for an invasion of Cuba. Now, what's interesting about this is coming from Ruben fucking Gallego, not exactly a bleeding heart communist by any means. Okay? I'm glad that there are some other Democrats who are finally speaking out about this kind of fuckery. I think this should be treated, if you want to treat it like a partisan issue, that's fine. But this is another unbelievably cruel action that we are already initiating that we will only worsen. What coincidence, Nick Field says, that Cuba has finally decided to attack America after 70 years, right when the Trump administration was planning their own regime change. What a strange bit of timing. Oh, well, let's not look into it. Trump is going full theocracy.
Finish the house of the Lord.
Okay, we'll do that in a second. Arturo Dominguez says, no one believes the story about Cuba attacking the U.S. to be true. That's how ridiculous it sounds. Yet these Miami Cubans are going to try to weaponize this nonsense since nothing else they've tried is working. Goes to show how dishonest they are and always has been. Yeah, Mario Diaz Balart says, we've seen the threat drones pose in the Middle East. Now they are 90 miles from our shores and near critical infrastructure. It's clear that the Cuban regime is a national security threat. Damn, at least go blow up a ship in Havana Harbor like we did in 1998. Way cooler false flag than some leaked intelligence bullshit. I mean, they're not even trying. They don't even need to try. That's the whole point, right? It's a real what are you going to do about it type situation here, because the democratic wishes of the majority do not fucking matter. Yeah, this is what most gusanos sound like. Still mad they took my grandfather's plantation. Real Cubans like me love the U.S.-Israeli embargo. His slaves were happy, according to him. For slave owners, capitalism is freedom. You said 1998? Yeah, you mean 1898. The Belgian... wait, no, not 1898. No, there's... What are you talking about? No, after the Cuban Revolution, there was... After the Cuban Revolution, or you're talking about USS Maine. But after the Cuban Revolution, they also blew up another, America allegedly blew up another weapon shipment that was coming in from Belgium. Yeah, you're talking about the USS Maine. But this has happened. I mean, this is also a rewriting For the record, what is taking place right here is also not dissimilar to previous incidents, previous false flag attempts that we have designed. Okay? So even on this end, even the false manufacturing context or manufacturing pretext for a first strike on Cuba has been entertained in the past. JFK very famously said no to it. There was an initiative by the CIA at the time to create some kind of false flag where there would be an attempt at terrorism on U.S. soil, and they would pin it on Cubans. They wanted to make it seem like Cuba did, like a 9/11 style attack on, in Miami on U.S. soil. JFK said, that's insane. We don't want that. Operation North was the name. I've covered it before on this broadcast. And and then JFK was so mad about the numerous failures of the CIA and also this like insane attempt that it was reported, JFK was reported as saying, I'm going to rip the CIA into shreds and piece by piece. And then what happened to the CIA was, well, we don't know what happened to the CIA, but what happened to his head was what he said he was going to do to the CIA on that one sad afternoon in Dallas, Texas. Okay, so who knows? Yeah. Okay, so there is that. The Trump administration is sharply escalating its pressure campaign to get Cuba to open up its economy and allow greater political freedoms. Okay, sure. Even as the conflict in Iran continues, the U.S. is using a mix of threats and inducements, including new sanctions, potential indictments, and offers of aid to force the issue in the coming weeks. In a surprise visit to the island on Thursday, CIA Director John Ratcliffe delivered a message to Cuba that a rare chance to stabilize its failing economy, according to a U.S. official. But there is also an implicit threat that the U.S. could resort to the sort of military action that it took in Venezuela in January. This, I think, is literally because Trump wants it, for the record. It might come across as silly, but I genuinely think the only reason why this is happening is because Trump wants it. Because you don't need to do this at all to Cuba. I know for a fact, from my own personal conversations with both Cubans and even people in the government as well, that they are, and their own, revelations as well, they want to cut a deal with America. They just don't want America to keep killing them, okay? So, I mean, Cuba does not have the military capabilities of staving off an American attack. It's ridiculous. It's no longer the 60s or 70s. There's no USSR aid here. There's no major global power that is going to offer any sort of military aid to Cuba. They have nothing. And their economy has been destroyed by the United States of America. They just want respite. They want to be able to operate like a normal country, right? They want to be able to operate like a normal fucking country. That's all they want. And America's not giving it to them. I mean, we've destroyed their electrical grid with these ridiculous sanctions. It's totally unjust. And then we offer them a crumb of aid in return with conditions. It's fucking ridiculous. Totally unnecessary, right? Anyway, the two governments have been in talks since February, but after some initial signs of movement, the U.S. administration has, over the past fortnight, been signaling a sense of growing frustration. Here's CIA Director John Ratcliffe attending a meeting with Cuban officials in Havana on Thursday. A U.S. official said the administration feared the Cubans were playing for time. Here, you can take that too. Right there. Oh, thank you. No, I'm good. Thank you. The U.S. official said the administration feared the Cubans were playing for time, given both the drawn-out conflict with Iran and opinion polls predicting strong results for Democrats in November's midterm elections. Washington is pushing for Cuba to liberalize its economy. Once again, Cuba has taken the initiative in the aftermath of the Obama deal. Doesn't this sound identical to fucking Trump with JCPOA, by the way? Trump destroys the JCPOA. Trump destroys the JCPOA, says, oh, we got a better deal for Cuba. They should liberalize its economy. Or, sorry, not the JCPOA, sorry, Cuban normalization. Yeah, Cuba liberalized its economy after normalization with Barack Obama. I can't believe it. He just literally is doing a shittier, more violent version, a less successful version of everything that Barack Obama has done as far as fucking foreign policy. It's so ridiculous, dude. It doesn't make any fucking sense to me at all. It doesn't make any sense. He literally is just like ripping apart over his 2 terms all the stuff that Barack Obama did, only to like put another shittier version of it from the American side. And I mean, shittier overall for everybody involved, let's be real. I'm putting his name on it. Cuba does not constitute a threat to the United States of America. It's fucking bullshit. Anyway, let's watch this now.
They are running out of electricity, and so they are protesting against America and its embargo. For the last 4 months, Cubans have been cut off from their traditional lifeline, Venezuelan oil, in what looks like Washington's attempt at regime change, in what it's always regarded as its backyard.
We have gone more than 40 hours without electricity. I live in a community where there are many elderly people, many of them bedridden. Food is going bad inside refrigerators. That's the little food which can actually be bought.
America's domino theory was that Cuba's 1959 revolution would eventually flip all of Latin America communist. But now Donald Trump, who was flying back from China on Friday, is trying to flip Cuba capitalism's way instead.
You talk about a declining country. They are really a nation or a country in decline. So we're going to see. We have a lot to talk about on Cuba, but not maybe for tonight.
The president sent his CIA.
By the way, every Latin American country is the same. Every election cycle, they go and they fucking vote for a social democrat who is immediately called a communist. The social democrat does like maybe modest improvements on some social safety nets. And then at the end of his term, every single Latin American country turns around and goes, oh, we just need a fascist, actually. We just need a fascist who is going to be a neoliberal. So then they elect a fascist neoliberal, and approximately 3 weeks into the reign of the fascist neoliberal, the entire country decides, oh my God, this was a fucking massive mistake. How could we have done this? We should shut this shit down with a general strike. Literally. I don't know what the fuck goes on in the minds of Latin American countries and the citizens living there, but they will literally elect a neoliberal fascist, and they will go in a matter of weeks. Not even like a year. They don't wait for a year. They'll be like, oh my God, it took us 1 week to realize we made a massive mistake. The only exception right now to this cycle in Latin America is Mexico. Okay? I don't understand how you go and you vote for the neoliberal fascism party. Like, it'll literally be like, hello, I am, please vote for me. I am Pinochet's grandson. And I love what my grandfather did to this country. And then the country will be like, this is a great idea. We should vote for Pinochet's grandson. We should do neoliberal fascism here. And then a week later, they'll be like, what a mistake this was. We have to stop. We have to cripple the entire economy now. We have to do a mass strike. It's like, bro, y'all voted for him. What the fuck? In any case, the reason for why I'm bringing this up is because like flipping Cuba into a capitalist country is not going to have any reverberations for other nation states. Capitalism itself is a contradictory system that's destroying itself, that's eating itself alive. So people are already frustrated. Isn't neoliberal and fascist oxymoronic? What? Buddy, do you know who Pinochet is? Oxymoronic? That's the OG fascist. Or not the OG fascist, the OG neoliberal, sorry.
Director John Ratcliffe to Havana this week, America's chief spy demanding what the agency called fundamental changes, with US officials not ruling out the use of force. The faces of US intelligence officers were blurred in what is otherwise a blatant return to the politics of the Cold War.
It's my personal opinion. You cannot change the economic trajectory of Cuba as long as the people who are in charge of it now are in charge of it. That's what's going to have to change, because these people are proven incapable. I hope I'm wrong. We'll give them a chance. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we're going to be able to change the trajectory of Cuba as long as these people are in charge in that regime.
Raul Castro still dresses like a Cuban revolutionary, even though he's about to turn 95 next month. The Americans are talking to his bodyguard, wearing blue in the middle here. That's also Raul Castro's grandson. But prosecutors in Florida are also threatening to indict the old man to face trial in the United States, as they did before capturing Venezuela's president earlier this year.
The message to the Cubans is very clear that a similar situation could arise with Raul Castro being under indictment and potentially extradited. So the message to the Cubans is clear. The pressure is on. A timeline's been delivered. And now it's going to be up to the Cubans as to whether or not they comply.
It seems unlikely that US Special Forces really would mount an operation to capture a frail 95-year-old. But what is becoming clearer is that Cuba could well be living on borrowed time.
For what? United States of America, the CIA would do flyover missions over Cuba and deploy bioweapons during the Cold War. So obviously, Cuban anti-air defense systems were very, highly alerted to any sort of unsanctioned flight missions over the Cuban airspace. And one of these unsanctioned flight missions was, what is it called? The Brothers something. It was like a fake anti-Cuba, anti-communist charity. And they were doing a flight mission where they were, according to the American side, they were doing a flight mission to drop flyers over Cuban airspace. And they were warned numerous times. They were warned numerous times with the Cuban administration, the Cuban military, and they did not respond, so the Cubans shot them down. This was many, many years ago. The American government is using that as a reason to indict Raul Castro, the fucking, Brothers to the Rescue. Thank you. Hermanos al Rescate, Brothers to the Rescue. They're using that as a reason. They're saying it was his responsibility.
The Americans are not demanding this Caribbean island transition to democracy. But these departing CIA officers are tasked with changing Cuba's leadership to open it up to American companies and giving President Trump, their boss, the kind of geopolitical success which Iran has so far denied him.
Controversial streamer...
It's so funny. Literally all of these countries want to do business with America. With Iran, Iran would love to do business with America. That's one of their demands. When we talk about sanctions relief in Iran, which is very clearly their major demand, that is sanctions relief for American companies so they can do business with Iranian companies. Like, that's literally the number one demand that Iran has made since the sanctions started. Of course they want fucking business with America. It's the consumption engine of the planet. So when Trump is like, yeah, we have to fucking kill them dead so that they'll do business with us, it's so stupid. Same with Cuba. Just take the sanctions off then, dumbass. What do you mean? It's so fucking stupid. Yeah, Clavicular has been charged, but there's more. I wanted to cover more. Like, do you guys have like a good video that we could watch potentially about quick resource that we can point to for what America's done in Cuba? Maybe not my own documentary, obviously.
Alone.
Yeah. Go back to my YouTube playlist. Why is Clavicular charged in the middle of a lesbian flag? I don't know. The Cuba stuff makes me feel like my blood pressure's going up. Yeah, I know. Overzealots is actually pretty good. He has some Cuba videos we could watch. We were watching In Defense of Cuba, How the Media Lies to You. Here, I'll just drop you into this right now.
Largely due to the U.S. blockade. I don't think I need to remind you about the negatives when that's all the Western media loves to go on about. Instead, Let this video serve as a counterbalance that highlights all that's commendable about post-revolutionary Cuba. Immediately upon taking over, the new Cuban revolutionary government got to work implementing the Moncada program, making good on Castro's platform outlined back during his trial in '53. Cuba at this time was suffering from immense income inequality exacerbated by the years of colonialism, neocolonialism, US-backed dictatorship, and a collaborationist comprador Cuban elite. As we've already seen, those who aim to diminish the results of the Cuban Revolution love to claim that prior to Castro, Cuba was a rich country.
Cuba had in 1958, the year before Castro took over, the highest standard of living of any Latin American country and half of Europe.
However, this is the same old dishonest bullshit said about many pre-revolutionary societies where the riches are funneled straight to the upper echelons while the masses live in squalor. To quote Vijay Prashad and Noam Chomsky on the matter, a study by professors in Havana from 1957 noted, the city of Havana is living in an epoch of extraordinary prosperity while in the countryside, people, especially the agricultural workers, are living in sluggish, miserable, and desperate conditions too difficult to believe. That is why the new revolution's agrarian reform law was so eagerly anticipated. See, one of the ways the revolutionary government tackled this issue of inequality was by limiting land holdings and redistributing land to the peasantry. Contrary to what you may have heard, Castro did offer compensation for this. These agrarian reforms not only broke up the latifundia, huge estates controlled by a small, typically white elite whose power flowed directly from colonial-era land structures, but also led to the expropriation, again with compensation, and redistribution of the vast arable land hoarded by foreign companies to the detriment of the Cuban masses. To quote Arnold August's Cuba and Its Neighbors, according to a 2008 U.S. Department of Agriculture report, in the late 1950s, U.S. interests owned 75% of the arable land. The end result of these land reforms was the distribution of land to over 100,000 landless farmers who had previously lived in poverty. Aside from the land reforms, Castro's government emphasized...
For the record, Fidel Castro's parents also owned land. As a testament to how much of a real one he is, he also literally took pieces of the farmland that his own family owned that was beyond the government allotted like personal land usage, and he redistributed it back.
The need for human services and more radical change, and they wasted no time getting going. The urban reform law of 1960 set rents to no more than 10% of a family's income, mortgage rates were cut.
Cuba is the most overhated, most maligned, like unjustifiably maligned country on the planet, dude. Fidel Castro and Che Guevara are genuinely two of the greatest revolutionaries in history. I love Lenin, I love Fidel Castro, and I love Che Guevara. They are genuinely fucking heroes. Okay? Adjusted to their time, they were unbelievable saints. Okay? No, even more so than like Mao. Because looking at the entirety, like what Mao was able to achieve is insane, right? What Mao was able to achieve was absolutely insane. He is the godfather of the People's Republic of China. But it's obvious that there were especially in the later years, there were tremendous excesses, right? Che and Lenin did no cultural revolution. Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, there was a conversation that I had, I won't tell you with who, where I was talking to them about how China has this like unbelievable tendency for efficiency where like they have, like rating systems for even police officers, right? You have a bad experience with a cop, you go onto an app and you literally tattle on the cop to the government. You say, this was a bad experience, boom, I'm rating him low. And I was talking to this person who was telling me like, that doesn't fucking work. And I was like, why can't we have that in America? And he was like, I don't know, maybe because there was no cultural revolution. Americans would literally abuse the Uber rating system like crazy. There would never be like a normal process there. It would get bricked in like a fucking week. And I was like, damn, that's kind of true. That's kind of true. I mean, look at fucking Yelp reviews. You go to Japan, Google reviews are very important in Japan. America, Google reviews mean nothing. Nothing at all. Okay? Also, the USSR didn't have a cultural revolution and then they ended up with Pizza Hut. True, true, true. Anyway, let's continue.
Landlords were forbidden to evict their tenants, and the owners of urban land were obliged to sell vacant sites at low prices to anyone planning to build a house, wrote historian Richard Gott. Utility rates for electricity, transport, and telephone services were slashed to make them more affordable for the working class. Real wages increased by about 15%, and social services were quickly expanded to include free schooling, healthcare, medicine, water, social security, burial services, and more. In 1961, the government took massive strides to combat illiteracy, and according to historian Paco Ignacio Taibo II, the results were spectacular. 707,000 people had been taught to read and write, and only 3.9% of the population was illiterate after just 2 years of revolution and just one mass campaign. I feel like when it comes to judging the progress made by a developing country, some of us have this tendency to compare it to imperialist Western nations and then mock it for being relatively behind. But that's not exactly fair, is it? These countries don't have centuries of colonial plundering under their belts to thank for their wealth. They were on the receiving end of that brutal structure all this time. Shouldn't we be comparing these countries to A, where they started from, and B, their neighbors? In the case of Cuba, the improvements were astonishing. Take the aforementioned health services as an example.
You can't do that, because if you do that, all of a sudden, if you adjust the timeline, if you compare countries to their relative beginning position, all of a sudden, you arrive at a very scary truth. That scary truth is that every communist revolution has led to unbelievable improvements. You must never do that. You have to compare them to countries that have engaged in colonial plunder. And even then, only adjusted to the immediate circumstances, never to where those countries' actual material conditions are from their own relative beginnings. You can't do that. However, as capitalism, this suicidal behemoth, worsens contradictions in a way where it's virtually impossible not to notice it to the average person. When you look at places like Syracuse, Buffalo, West Virginia in its entirety, you look at Gary, Indiana, you look at all these different places that are on a downward trajectory for the past couple of decades. And then you look at a place like fucking China where you're like on maximalist code, where you're like, whoa, those are tier 1 cities. Okay, you look at tier 4 cities in China, and you're like, they have an upwards trajectory. How the fuck did that happen? It becomes very clear that China is raising living standards dramatically all across the board. Whereas in America, there is a downward trajectory virtually everywhere. That's it. That's it. So even that relativity comparison adjusted to today's conditions and the trajectory is becoming noticeable. Who the fuck told you that Buffalo's on a downward trajectory? It's pretty nice. Bitch, I've seen it. What do you mean?
Prior to the revolution, things were atrocious. Rural infant and maternal mortality rates were the second highest in Latin America, noted professor of Latin American political economy, Helen Jaffe. So when our annoying little friend over here recites the claim that Cuba's infant mortality rate was actually already low prior to Castro...
Here's the Wall Street Journal. The Cuba that Castro inherited was developing but relatively prosperous and ranked third in Latin America in doctors and dentists and daily calorie consumption per capita. Its infant mortality rate was the lowest in the region.
He's operating on skewed data, where the affluent parts of Cuba mess up the numbers and mask the brutal inequality and suffering in the rural parts. Jaffe goes on to write, some 80% of children in the countryside suffered intestinal parasites in 1959. It was the #1 cause of death, and 60% of the rural population was seriously undernourished. Life expectancy in rural areas was 50 years, 60 nationally. There was only one rural hospital, only 4% of rural Cubans ate meat, only 3% had bread, less than 20% had eggs, only 2% had running water, 9% had electricity, and as Jaffe goes on, the true enemy of public health, a report noted, was economic underdevelopment, feudal exploitation, the latifundia plantation system, and its consequences. Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, and the revolutionary government remedied this. They established the rural medical services to provide those suffering in the countryside with aid so that no one was left sick, dying and forgotten anywhere in the country. A free, universal healthcare system was created, infant mortality dropped to under 10 deaths per 1,000 live births by the 1990s, and to under 5 deaths by 2017, a rate lower than that of the much richer United States, and 10 times lower than Cuba's closest neighbor, Haiti. This represented a significant improvement over pre-revolutionary Cuba, where infant mortality stood at 60 per 1,000 live births overall, and 100 per 1,000 in rural areas. Not to mention that maternal mortality was 120 deaths per 100,000 births, with only half of all births in the country taking place in hospitals in the 1950s. By the 1990s, 99% of births were taking place in hospitals. Life expectancy has soared from nearly 60 years before the revolution, when there were only around 6,000 physicians, mostly stationed in Havana, to nearly 80 years today, with over 70,000 physicians spread across the entire country, as is noted in
Higher than America.
Pedro Ross's How the Workers' Parliaments Saved the Cuban Revolution. Thanks to a national immunization campaign that began in 1962, the Cuban government was able to radically combat disease. Polio was eradicated that same year, malaria in 68, diphtheria in 71, measles in 93, rubella in 95, and so on and so forth. And when we compare Cuba's economic performance to that of its Latin American contemporaries, it substantially outperformed them, especially during the 70s and 80s. To be specific, between 1970 to 1988, Cuba enjoyed an annual economic growth rate that averaged 4.1%, while the comparable growth figure for Latin America during that time was just 1.2%. In the 80s, the rest of Latin America suffered an extreme debt crisis that caused the region's overall GDP to plummet by almost 10% between 1981 and 1984, while Cuba experienced an economic boom at that time with an annual average growth rate of 7.3%. It wasn't until Cuba's trading partners ceased to exist and the US economic warfare intensified that Cuba began to suffer substantially. But we'll get to that later. First, we haven't even touched on the social improvements in the wake of the Cuban Revolution. Castro's government immediately banned all forms of racial discrimination.
Unbelievably woke, by the way, with one exception. The Cuban Revolution was incredibly woke. There was a social revolution. There wasn't like a cultural revolution in the way that, it existed in China, but it was absolutely a social revolution as well. It had a lot of social elements. The only non-woke aspect of the Cuban Revolution was homosexuality. And that's it. And it's so funny that racist, homophobic, queerphobic Americans will regularly point to that to be like, dude, what about the gays? What about the gays? And it's really funny because dude, what the fuck was America doing at the time? Okay. What are you talking about? They were fucking far more woke than us far before we were. Okay. Calm down. Thank you for the 25 bones, Özlem Sherif.
In private and public life, prior to the revolution, Cuba had segregated beaches, clubs, schools, and so forth. The revolutionary government outlawed this while promoting gender equality and the integration of women into the workforce. Now, if I were to tell you, my mostly Western audience, that post-revolutionary Cuba also boasts a unique form of participatory democracy, odds are a good amount of you wouldn't believe me. And that's fine. Again, I'm not here to pretend that Cuba is perfect or that they have everything figured out, but rather to challenge your preconceptions, specifically about democracy and what actually constitutes it. In the West, particularly in the US, democracy seems to be something people do once every 4 years, where they go out and vote for one of two corrupt politicians from two corrupt parties, all while their material realities steadily...
One-party communist states have... Okay, here. I'll explain it to you. In the Western world, in Western liberal democracy, you have multi-parties, you have a two-party system, you have a multi-party system, right? You have a parliamentary system, you have a two-party presidential system like the one we have, like in a constitutional republic. And the reality is it usually brackets itself off into two different poles, right? It's true. You got the right pole, the right coalition, you got the left coalition. Sometimes it's shepherded by the Labor Party, but it's actually a neoliberal party, whatever, right? However, in one party governance, like in Cuba or in China, there are some fake parties. It's, irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's symbolic, right? but they have direct participatory democracy at the local level. And the parties have an infrastructure where through past performance and efficiency, you rise up through the ranks. It's actually in China specifically, it's like one of the most difficult tasks is to be a guy who works in local government in the party. I'll give you one additional example. Like I was watching this thing where they were talking about how like in China, in certain rural areas, they have the name of the party official outside of doors in one of their poverty eradication initiatives to say, if this party official whose name is outside of this door doesn't successfully eradicate the poverty of this specific house, then they will no longer be reelected. They will never get, they will never get a better standing within the party system itself. It's unbelievably focused on efficiency. It's a very interesting, there's a very interesting management style that is as close to meritocracy as you can get, but it's very bureaucratic, and it blows the Western consciousness where people are like, well, what do you mean there's one party? The reality is, even in the Western system, we have uniparty consensus on a lot of things, right? Even if I were to believe that the multi-party or, it is a it is a technocracy. Absolutely. You're not wrong. So in the Western world, and I grew up in the Western system. I like the Western system. I like the facade of choice. I believe that it's very good. In the Western world, we technically have two poles, right? Two different poles that seemingly are at odds with one another, but there is a lot of consensus politics. So it turns into the same one-party politics that you normally would see. This is part of the reason why. There are some marginal differences between like the Democrats and Republicans in many respects. And if you're bought into this system, you look at it and you think, well, how dare you? You know, even those marginal differences have like ginormous consequences with one party over the other. But that's a race to the bottom, right? It's a race to the bottom of which party is going to be less cruel to you. That's why harm reduction narratives is unbelievably successful, or used to be unbelievably successful, right? The consensus exists within the system, and anything outside of that consensus is functionally barred, right? Even if it's not legally barred, it's functionally barred. So the way that works is, simply put, if we look at it from an outsider's perspective, in China, capital is controlled by the government. Capital is subservient to the government. In America, the government is subservient to capital. So you have two different parties, but nothing really changes. In China, you have one party, but everything changes all the time. It is much more responsive and much more dynamic in many instances. This concept is not, this is descriptive, right? This concept blows Westerners' minds where they're like, how can you say this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. They're not democratic. They're a dictatorship. They're authoritarian, all this shit. But when you look at the results, of China, regardless of the lack of a multi-party system within China, they have participatory democracy at the local level, within the party system. And not only that, but also they have been unbelievably responsive, right? Did you see the same explanatory TikTok I saw about the subject? No, I didn't. So, as I was saying, this has changed quite a bit in recent years. Oh, the one aspect of consensus politics I was going to explain to you is the same exact conversation that I had with Adam Mockler, also known as Adam Mogler at times, and sometimes known as Adam Mocklib. I tried to explain to Adam the concept of consensus democracy, where we were talking about the marginal differences between either party and how consequential it is to the average citizens. However, from my perspective, and the perspective of a lot of regular Americans, that there is a radical alternative beyond what two parties demonstrate as the only viable route. The example I used was on healthcare. So Adam stayed within the consensus and said, well, Democrats want to fund ACA subsidies. If you take those ACA subsidies away, all of a sudden, tens of thousands of people are going to experience, medical debt and maybe even death because they can't go to the doctor because they don't have enough money. And I was like, that's right. That's unbelievably cruel. But from my framework, there's an alternative out there that's not a part of the consensus politics. The consensus politics in America is that healthcare has to remain private. It's private. It'll get, at most, Democratic Party-backed subsidies for private healthcare, and the Republicans will try to take those subsidies away and deregulate the industry even further to allow them to draw even higher profits. But there is an alternative out there. It's called socialized medicine, and yet neither of the two parties genuinely push for socialized medicine. That's consensus politics. And from my perspective, outside of the consensus politics, it's approximately 50 to 60,000 people every single year that die due to lack of access to adequate health care because they are paywalled. That's far more cruel than even the Democratic Party's alternative, and certainly unbelievably cruel in comparison to the Republican Party's alternative. But that's consensus politics. So this is why we say those who are a little bit more radical than the average, or those who are a little bit more advanced in their political education in comparison to the average self-identifying liberal, we say, look, there's two parties in America, two major parties, but they have a consensus on a lot of issues. They don't actually look for alternatives that are real solutions that can help improve Americans' material conditions, the working class's material conditions. Socialized medicine is outside of that consensus. Anti-imperialism is outside of that consensus. Funding Israel is outside of that consensus. Notice how difficult it's been to get the Democratic Party to be responsive to the needs of the base. The base doesn't want to continue the genocide. The base wanted to stop Biden. They demanded it. Democrats refused to listen. It was an election season, too. It was the one time where they have to at least fake being responsive, and yet they decided to lose the election instead. That's uniparty politics. That's consensus politics. Okay? This is important to understand. Was this the video?
There's a laminated
I did see
card.
this video. This is what you were talking about. I thought you were talking about the one-party system. Yes, this is what I was talking about.
Nailed to the front door of roughly 29 million homes in rural China. It lists the family's names, their monthly subsidy, and one other thing: the name and personal phone number of the party official whose career depends on getting that specific family out of poverty. Between 2013 and 2020, China registered 89.62 million people across 132 counties into a national poverty file system. Each household got a checklist: no worry about food or clothing, plus guaranteed education, basic medical care, and safe housing. Roughly 3 million officials were dispatched into villages to manage individual files. In one village in Guizhou, a district official named Luo Wenshui arrived to find 137 poor households and 52 officials already assigned to help them. That's nearly one official for every 3 families. If your assigned household didn't clear the poverty line, you lost promotion eligibility, bonuses, sometimes salary. Western anti-poverty systems count people in poverty nationally and distribute resources through agencies. There is no named official accountable for that file clearing. No one loses their job if a specific family is still poor next year. But instead of just
Also, Western poverty eradication initiatives. And this sounds so insane when people... Do you want to know how Western poverty eradication initiatives work? It's not by literally improving the immediate material circumstances of like a poor family. It's crafted around how many people you kick off of welfare. That's precisely the reason why Republicans regularly make it harder for people to access welfare, and then they turn around and say, see, we eradicated poverty. Isn't that fucking crazy? In the West, Americans, in the American government, poverty eradication is determined by how many poor people whose lives you objectively made worse. We eradicated homelessness not by counting them as humans. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much that.
Just throwing resources at the problem, China reformatted the problem itself. 5 indicators, a checklist, a name on the door. The tool doesn't exist in the West, not because we think it's a bad idea, but because we never even thought of it. And that's worth sitting with, regardless of what you think about the politics.
Oregon recently ran a pilot program in which homeless teens were given housing and a stipend. It was wildly successful. Almost all ended up leaving the program voluntarily because they had sufficient income and were able to secure their own housing without assistance. Wait, really? Is that kicking off welfare a standard general metric or just a Republican metric? No, it's a standard general metric. Democrats do it too. Who do you think was the OG? Bilbo motherfucking Clinton. That's who. Who do you think was the OG kicker of welfare recipients? Bill motherfucking Clinton. That's who. That, my friends, is uniparty consensus politics. There you go. There you fucking go.
Decline over time, and it seems as though fundamental change never comes, no matter how badly the populace wants it. Take universal health care in the US, for example. The masses want it, it's a popular demand, but no matter the color tie on the president, it never comes. As the saying goes, in America you could change the party, but not the policy. In a place like Cuba, sure, you have one party that serves as an ideological vanguard, but the policies can actually be changed, and the masses can exert some form of control on a grassroots level. That's why
I think this also literally stems from the 2 different mechanisms of authority. Okay? The overt authoritarian level of control that you see in a lot of these countries, and I'm not even talking about like state repression, because state repression in Cuba is unbelievably marginal in comparison to like fucking North Korea, which would have the highest level of state repression, or China that has a relatively high level of state repression. Cuba doesn't have much state repression at all. Like, there are people that get arrested. There are people who will be detained, maybe thrown in jail for a little bit for engaging in like counter-revolutionary behavior, engaging in behavior that's like obviously unstable. Because it's, you know, in a constant state of war with the largest hegemon on the planet, the largest, most powerful hegemon on the planet. So it's understandable to exist under those like warlike conditions where you're going to be like, okay, you're a spy for my enemy, right? Although, weren't the larger purges in the beginning? No, their purges were also totally overblown. As a matter of fact, there's, I don't know if Overzealous talks about it, but there's extensive reporting from declassified CIA materials where they look at like the state-sponsored executions that take place afterwards, after the Cuban Revolution. And in comparison to the Batista regime's executions, it was literally nothing. And the only reason why they had to do some kind of legal punishment was to literally satiate the masses, because they wanted to do decentralized violence to whoever they decided is a Batista supporter. Because there was a lot of revenge. There was a lot of demand for revenge. So the masses were trying to straight up murder whoever the fuck they could get their hands on that was a Batista supporter. Because Batista was incredibly cruel. Much, much more cruel than even the way that the Americans have talked about the Cuban Revolution. So, yeah, the relative like legal punishments that came in the aftermath in the Cuban government after the Cuban Revolution was marginal.
As Arnold August notes, Cuba is an example of democracy in motion, as opposed to the stagnant, decrepit bullshit that takes place in the US. And in case you don't believe me, I'll quickly explain how the system of participatory democracy...
By the way, that was also the exact opposite of the Cultural Revolution that took place. If you want to look at a comparison... If you want to look at a comparison between like decentralized violence that had tremendous excesses, the Cultural Revolution is a great example of that, as opposed to like this was very localized, very centralized, or not localized, very centralized. The central government force in the interim were the ones who dished out the punishments for some of the worst, most ruthless torturers and rapists and the like.
Looks in Cuba. Right off the bat, it's worth mentioning that many Cubans reject the imposition of multi-party systems and argue that before 1959, Cuba had political parties, but no democracy. A direct rebuttal to the idea that the two are inextricably linked. But before we get into that, we should probably lay some groundwork and talk about what democracy even is and why it's important. Aviva Chomsky, in her book A History of the Cuban Revolution, has a great succinct passage that perfectly describes how a fully fleshed out democracy should look. It goes like this. In essence, democracy has to do with systems or mechanisms for the people of a society to be involved in making decisions about how their society will function. Political scientists distinguish between representative and direct democracy. In a representative democracy, people participate in decision-making by electing representatives to make the actual decisions. In a direct democracy, decisions are made by some sort of collective assembly in which all can participate. And in Cuba, the latter reigns through direct citizen involvement, mass organizations, and a unique electoral structure.
To be fair, though, not to get all actually here, but due to the deteriorating material conditions in Cuba as of like the last decade or so, I will say the participation has diminished. The youth are completely checked out. Every single young Cuban that is born on the island, their dream is to leave, get the fuck out of Cuba, okay? Their dream is to just get the fuck out of Cuba. They don't believe that the government can ever fucking protect them. They don't have any care or consideration for it. They've heard it so many fucking times that it was the blockade, it's the blockade, it's the blockade, it's the embargo, it's the blockade. They fucking despise that argument because that's all they've known, right? That's all they've ever known. And it's understandable if all you've ever known is death, destruction, poverty, and one government. You're going to think that it's the fucking government that's played a major role here, you know? Hello, Hasanabi. I believe healthcare should be privatized. You fucking mutt. What are you, Mr. Blue Cross or Mr. Blue Shield? What the fuck do you mean? Okay, man. I assume it's a Canadian hog, right? It's gotta be a Canadian hog. Damn, you read the chat fast? Show mercy? Okay, take a second off. We found Gretchen Whitmer's alt.
Are held at the municipal, provincial, and national levels, and the Communist Party of Cuba, the PCC, does not nominate or run candidates. Money plays no role in Cuban elections, no advertising, no campaigning, just a one-page biography of each candidate posted publicly. The general election process is divided into two distinct phases. Phase 1 covers municipal elections. In small neighborhood districts, residents gather in open assemblies to directly nominate candidates.
Like saying, oh, you can only be a part of one party, so how could this be democratic? You have disagreements, robust disagreements within the party system, okay? So it's not like, it would be akin to like having a Nazi party, right? Like you can't have a Nazi party, even though it exists, but you can't really have a serious, significant growth of a Nazi party. You can't have a Nazi party in Germany, for example, right? You have to have the AfD as a substitute. So it's kind of like that, where there are obviously not robust disagreement. No, there is. There absolutely is a lot of disagreement within the Cuban system. There are people who want to liberalize the economy. There are people who are actually actively pushing to liberalize the economy. And then there's obviously more resistant, more restrained forces that don't want to do it. And for the longest time, the forces that did not want any change is the reason why that change never came. So even if it's a one-party system, it's not like they're fucking aligned entirely, and local needs are primarily important, like first and foremost.
Candidates from among themselves by a show of hands. Citizens then elect delegates to the municipal assemblies via secret ballot. Once constituted, these local municipal...
Yeah, it's like if DSA was the sole party. If America was run by the singular, solitary Democratic Socialists of America as a one-party state, think about how many different tendencies exist, how many different caucuses exist within the DSA. You got the left caucus, you got the right caucuses. Oh my God. Oh my God, the fucking groundworks guys would be unfucking bearable, I think. I mean, no disrespect. I love the groundworks guys, you know, but I do think that they would be impossible to contend with. They would do, oh my God.
assemblies elect their own president and vice president from among their ranks. Phase 2 covers national elections for the National Assembly of People's Power. For these seats, candidates are proposed by
I mean, I would go so far as say the Democratic Socialists of America, which is not like a separate party within our current duopoly, but will run candidates, even cadre candidates that they have seemingly no control over, Zohran Mamdani, or even candidates that they have actually opposed in the past or have called out. I won't name any names on that front. And yet there is an unbelievable degree of ideological diversity within the DSA in comparison to the Democratic Party, which literally ranges from AOC and Zohran Mamdani to fucking, Joe Biden. So are you stupid, commie mutt, evil Chinese drone? Wait, what? No, don't ban him. We were having fun with him. He was like, please be merciful. And I gave him a second off and he came back from that 1 second and said, you're an evil commie mutt. I wanted to see what he would say. I want to play with this one. This is a toy. Are you fucking stupid? Typical commie mutt Chinese drone. DSA is actually democratic. That's a superpower. Yeah, I wouldn't fucking call that a superpower. Let's be real. I have a difference in opinion on how. I mean, look, I'm not going to say anything. I'm on the outside. I'm agnostic. I'm org agnostic. I'm in favor of all anti-capitalist initiatives, okay? Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, third worldists, people who are maybe not Larishites or Revcoms. Like, unless it turns into a literal weird fucking sex cult or some kind of like potentially Fed-funded initiative, like a Wrecker initiative, I'm usually going to be in favor of it, okay? Can it be a normal sex cult? No. The Black Panther Party was democratic centralism. CIA feared that. Lol, not some decentralized ass structure. I think the CIA feared the Black Panthers not because of their democratic centralism, but because they were black. They were black revolutionaries at a time when there was an ongoing civil rights struggle in the country. Come on. That's gotta be. Lol, it's much more than that. You can't, dude. That's whiteness talking a little bit, I think. And even if you tell me that you're black, that's still, a little bit of a white education that's getting you to say that the CIA feared the Black Panthers because of their I am black, lol. No, I fucking knew it. Yeah, it's white education. Come on, man. You think the CIA was primarily worried about the Black Panthers because of their organizational tools? I mean, no, that's not the major reason. It was because they were black. I know the CIA, yeah, they were black and they had guns and they were organizing in black neighborhoods in a communist manner. They were black, they were armed, and they were communists. Of course, that's like the trifecta. You can't get more scary in the eyes of a racist government than those three things. And they were drippy, which is, probably also important. Yeah, they were a black revolutionary organization with weapons. Dude, they only killed Fred once he started organizing outside of black communities. It was when he became an actual threat. That's not to deny the fact that it was extremely racist, but it was definitely both. Guys, none of that has anything to do with the internal structure of the organization, though. He's making it seem like the reason why the CIA doesn't do anything about the DSA is because DSA is too decentralized and doesn't have like one singular focus in its organizational structure, as opposed to the Black Panthers, who were not assassinated because they were black, but because of democratic centralism. That's what the CIA feared the most. I don't think it wasn't because they were black. That is the central reason. I think it's both. Okay. The CIA feared democratic centralism. I don't even disagree with your ideological tendency. It's just funny to think that the CIA was like, listen, the CIA back then was that smart, for the record. Yes, they were. They were that smart. They were way, way better equipped back then. They knew a lot more than they do now. They knew Crazy Ball. How else could they infiltrate these communities? Come on. Nowadays, it doesn't take much. All you got to say is, sweetie, sweetie, where was the pro-Palestinian crowd for black folk? That's what they say. Everyone knows all black folk love Israel. That's what the CIA is doing nowadays. Back then, they actually had to have ball knowers. They had to have real ball knowers that were like actually educated. Real ass Mormons. Nowadays, motherfuckers are already engaging in record behavior on their own. Brother, you will not believe exactly who said what you just said. I'm crying. She straight up said, never mind, fuck BLM after one black person argued with her. What? Terrorists that throw trans women off roofs? Did that ever happen? My esteemed colleagues in the Democratic Party are so currently so brainwashed with Islamist propaganda that they're unsure if Hamas are fans of trans women. Lord help us. You made a statement about trans women being thrown off of roofs. It either happened or it didn't. Which is it? So you made it up. I knew that, but it's been fun interacting. Lol. I'm so glad I went to all those Black Lives Matter protests. Really feel the solidarity, diva. Bro, you can never come across like this. If I ever catch you in the real world, treating allyship as treating solidarity, I don't want to use fucking liberalized language, solidarity as a transactional thing, I will launch you into the goddamn sun. This is why I always tell you, okay, this idea that this is like supposed to be transactional. I went to the Black Lives Matter protest, so now you have to agree with whatever kind of Islamophobic and idiotic pro-American empire propaganda I am representing. You're a fucking asshole. Okay? What's wrong with her? Jesus, what isn't wrong with that woman, to be honest? Interesting how her threshold for abandoning black people is one disagreement, yet she is still a rabid Zionist when 95% of them are rampantly transphobic and think her existence is an abomination. Also, the follow-up, lol. You could have left it alone. Instead, you chose to interact and proved yourself to be a liar. Who's the stupid one? If I'd shown up in your mentions asking if slavery had happened, I'd imagine you'd be equally unwilling to take it seriously. Yeah, the difference is slavery did happen. Hamas never threw a trans person off of a rooftop. What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, just because you're a trans person doesn't mean that if you like hallucinate another one of America and Israel's enemies doing something to trans people, doesn't change the reality that one did not fucking happen and the other did. Now you're undermining the existence of chattel slavery to win an argument against a black woman who actually dared to question you. What the fuck? There are a lot of bigots like you in our party. Oh my God. Gen Z CIA can't read. Now is our time to organize. True, but also at the same time, I've talked about this so many times, but we already have solidarity poison. American individualism is a moral rot that has baked the collective consciousness of the American masses. Okay? So people already do record behavior on their own. You got the ultras on the one side who will just be like, what you're doing, I disagree with slightly, which is why you are my primary enemy. And then you got the liberals on the other side actively trying to undermine any kind of solidarity initiatives, constantly disparaging any sort of movement, constantly fucking claiming that like the real threat is actually to their left and not to the fascist developments happening on the right. So unfortunately, we have people behaving like little cops on their own. There's a little J. Edgar Hoover in the minds of every single fucking teeny bopper. Okay, every single goddamn Zoomer has a little J. Edgar Hoover working overtime in the back of their own minds, in the back of their own brains that says, this must be a cynical person. This person actually is not up to my standard. This person has been found to be guilty in the court of public opinion for a social crime, and therefore they're done. That's why we say kill the cop in your brain. Kill the little J. Edgar Hoover in your brain. Yes, inside of you there are two J. Edgar Hoovers. Both are gay. Gen Z is gay. Every successful revolutionary movement has been comprised of some of the most illiterate and also with the most to gain from any kind of revolution, and also some of the most literate. It's always the urban academics and also those working in the farms, the peasants, those who actually served in the military. It's always been that. It's always been that way. And then everyone becomes literate. Of course, that's one of the beauties of revolution.
student groups, and the Women's Federation, rather than directly by neighborhood assemblies. To ensure the national government remains anchored to the grassroots, up to 50% of these national deputies are the local municipal delegates who were already elected by their neighborhoods in Phase 1. Ultimately, this creates a participatory, bottom-up democratic system. So by now you might be wondering, if the PCC isn't involved in elections, what's its purpose? Well, it exists as an ideological vanguard. Influenced largely by the ideas of José Martí, who believed in a single unifying party to defend Cuba against foreign domination, the PCC guides the overall political and economic orientation of the country, but refrains from taking over administrative procedures or participating in the electoral process. And Cuba's democracy in motion goes beyond voting and includes massive networks of civil organizations. These organizations are embedded directly in the political system and have the constitutional right to initiate legislation, stabilize the economy during crisis, and more. For example, in the 1990s, after the USSR dissolved, over 80,000 workers' parliaments collectively formulated strategies to reorganize production and save the Cuban economy. But the most telling feature of Cuban democracy, in my opinion, is the grassroots legislative consultations. In Cuba, major national policies undergo extensive grassroots deliberation and amendment before they can be passed. As August wrote in reference to Castro's relationship with the citizenry, this is groundbreaking in the annals of revolution, whereby leaders publicly exchange with the people in mass meetings and a dialectic bond is created in order to make decisions. A clear example of this principle in action is the 2008 Social Security Bill, which was debated in over 85,000 local workers' assemblies.
So you're saying that that's dead now with the youth? Yes. Participation in the Cuban governance process is just effectively dead at this point, especially for the youth. They don't give a shit. They're completely checked out for the most part and want to get the fuck out of the country, which is understandable because all they've known their whole lives is fucking worsening material conditions, abject poverty, no job prospects, or even if they have a job, they just can't fucking pay for food because there's tremendous inflation because of this like patchwork liberalized system that they currently have on top of everything else, and because of the lack of materials necessary for a competent agricultural system. Can you explain why my Cuban American friends are so anti-Cuba? This is the whole video.
By more than 3 million people. Citizens' input directly shaped and amended the bill until it reflected the wishes of the masses. As a result, pensions were recalculated in a way that was more favorable to workers than what was originally proposed in the bill's first draft. The 2011 economic guideline reforms were debated by about 9 million people in over 160,000 meetings, which resulted in 68% of the guidelines being modified before being adopted. And the list goes on. My apologies if this part of the video feels dry or boring or too analytical, but I think it's important to show how democracy can take a different shape than what we see in the US and how it can produce more meaningful results. In Cuba, there's a highly decentralized electoral system paired with massive ongoing public consultations that give everyday Cubans veto power and the ability to amend the laws and economic plans that affect them. In the US, by contrast, you get to vote between Epstein's friend in red or Epstein's friend in blue. And yes, there are still shortcomings with the way things are in Cuba. That's why democracy is understood as a process and something that is ongoing and in motion, not just something that happens every 4th November, where you vote for the lesser evil. In April of 1960, a U.S. Internal State Department memo, colloquially referred to as the Mallory Memorandum, boasted the subject line, "The Decline and Fall of Castro," and it explicitly stated that the majority of Cubans supported Castro, that there was no effective political opposition in Cuba, and that U.S. military intervention would only cause Castro to become even more popular. The memo goes on to explain how the U.S. would go about achieving its goal of destroying Cuba so that its corporations can get back to plundering it the way they had for so many years prior. The only foreseeable means of alienating internal support is through disenchantment and disaffection based on economic dissatisfaction and hardship. Every possible means should be undertaken promptly to weaken the economic life of Cuba, it reads. Then it calls for denying Cuba money and supplies, openly fantasizes about falling real and monetary wages, and explicitly seeks to induce hunger, desperation, and the overthrow of Castro. Typically, when we talk about Cuba, people love to blame communism as though it were the primary cause of the island's suffering, supposedly doomed to fail because of its inherent futility. But if communism were destined to collapse on its own, why did U.S. officials feel the need to go all out like this? And to be clear, everything laid out in that memorandum was eventually carried out by the U.S. Remember how earlier I mentioned that the Cuban revolutionary government carried out land reform programs where vast tracts of often uncultivated arable land hoarded by foreign companies and the descendants of slave-owning Cuban elites were redistributed to the peasantry? Well, this is often cited as one of the main causes of economic tension between the US and Cuba. People point to this and claim that the evil communist dictator Fidel Castro stole property from the US and the Cuban land-owning elite, but in reality, Castro offered compensation for everything he expropriated, acted within the legal limits of Cuba's own 1940 constitution, which allowed confiscation for the public good and explicitly prohibited large land holdings, and he did so to reclaim land hoarded by foreign companies to the direct detriment of the Cuban people. If this sounds like some alien communist concept, I'd encourage you to look at your own country's eminent domain laws, which allows the state to confiscate private property.
No, but that's different because that's like capitalist style. Yeah. It's so funny because in many respects, like even the control over the flows of capital, for example, when people talk about that shit, it's like it is, what is this, fear and animated? Okay. Here, I'll watch the OG. Okay, checking Twitter on my laptop because it's not on my phone while I'm on the pooper. Okay, come downstairs.
Wait, you have your laptop on your lap while you're taking
I have a desk
shit?
in front of my bathroom.
Shut the you have a desk in front of your toilet?
Yeah. You haven't seen it? I'll show you when we go upstairs.
How did I miss this?
It's not like a desk. It's like a side table.
He's got he's in all men there are two wolves. And I think you're letting the autistic one win.
Oh my God, that was incredible. What is this? Care to explain this? What the fuck is this shit? Anytime someone sends me an Instagram link is horrible. What is this? Church of Jesus Christ Arab. I don't like this idea of you reading chat while shitting. I am. I don't know why you sent this to me. Okay? I don't know. I don't understand why you sent that to me. See, we just watched a beautiful animated recreation of a fear and bit. It's not even a bit, it's just my life, but whatever. And then you have to send me this fucking stupid ass bullshit. Will Nev added to your Cars universe?
There is an allusion to the fact that in Cars there is the Queen, which means that Princess Diana killed herself by driving into a wall. Okay. If we're going to be okay with the other thing that he was doing, we're just going to open it up. There is an illusion.
It's true. To Michael Hastings fan. Okay. That's crazy. Stop being mean to Michael Hastings fan. Is he even in the chat right now? How did JF Carr die? Ooh, that's a good one. The holy word of Utah's strongest soldiers is stupid to you now, Hassan. Of course he's in here. The fuck is an IRL token? Went outside? That's a real thing?
Damn, this guy's good.